A legacy hidden in silence now unleashes its truth.
Hello everyone, welcome to What If Tomioka Giyuu was the descendant of Itachi Uchiha movie. Before we start, please go support Lgabo9778 for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistaken character's gender, but of course Giyu is a male. Giyu Tomioka is a highly skilled hunter, a water pillar who always wears his fox mask, concealing his face. But why does he hide his face? It's not because he's ugly. It's because of his eyes. His eyes belong to a very powerful clan, but he knew nothing of his clan and only used them in emergencies. What he didn't know, however, was that he was a descendant of a prodigy from that clan, Itachi Uchiha. Chapter 1. We came across a brown-haired woman running from demons in the middle of a vast, seemingly endless forest. The woman had brown hair and blue eyes, her skin was somewhat pale, and she had a bundle hidden in blankets. This was Izumi Uchiha, fleeing with her son in her arms while her husband tried to defend her. The boy wore Anbu armor and carried a small katana to cut the demons. His face had markings from his eyes to his cheek, his hair was jet black, and his eyes, normally pure black, were red with 3 tomo in each. This was Itachi Uchiha, the prodigy of the Uchiha clan and the last survivor along with his wife, Izumi. Uchiha desperately tried to eliminate the beings that pursued them that night, but it was impossible. His katana wasn't made of the material for killing demons, and besides, his regeneration was rapid. He knew it was his day of death, but he would let his wife and child survive. But it was impossible. His wife ended up with a wound that would slowly kill her. This enraged Uchiha, and in a fit of anger, he slashed at all the demons. This happened while Izumi had to escape with tears in her eyes for abandoning her husband, but she knew he wouldn't survive long, so using everything she could, she went to a village and in a house, left her son with a scroll of the secrets of the Uchiha eyes, and a note saying something. With great sadness, she left her son, knocked on the door, and screamed to attract the demons who had already finished off her husband. A few hours passed and the little baby was crying because he didn't feel the warmth his mother gave him, but he was picked up by a girl and her parents from that house who looked at him with concern. These were the Tomioka family. The parents were as kind as their daughter Tsutako Tomioka. They didn't know what to do, but they decided to adopt the little baby who calmed down and opened his eyes, which were as blue as the sea. His hair was jet black. The Tomiokas entered the house and placed the baby on a futon so that he wouldn't feel cold. The baby, trembling slightly, began to stand up, leaving no trace that he had ever felt cold. Meanwhile, the Tomiokas were in the living room with a candle illuminating the letter in their hands, unsure what to say after what they had read with their own eyes. Paper. It is a pleasure for the person writing this letter. I regret not being able to introduce myself formally, but I had to leave my son at your doorstep due to urgent matters that prevented me from continuing in this world. From the bottom of my heart, I ask you to care for my son with the love of a mother and father that my husband Itachi and I were unable to give him. I will surely no longer be here by the time you finish reading this letter. The boy's name is Giyu. I ask that you please give him the scroll I left with this letter when he comes of age, so that he understands that we never meant to abandon him, and also give him your surname, so that he can live a normal life without complications. The temp. Izumi Uchiha. The Tomiokas didn't know what to say. The words wanted to come out of their mouths, but they couldn't. A pain began to grow in their chests when they read that letter, which revealed Izumi's feelings of sadness. But they were already decided. The Tomiokas would take care of that child. From now on, he was not Giyu Uchiha, he was Giyu Tomioka. Time skipped 10 years. During that time, the young Uchiha lived as normally as he could, for his attitude was anything but normal. He was always serious, showing no expression to others. His learning was rapid. He absorbed everything he read without difficulty, like a bag overflowing with knowledge, nothing escaping him. Meanwhile, he seemed bored, his face telling the world he wanted something more challenging. But this attitude had intensified since the death of his parents, the Tomiokas, leaving him alone with his beloved sister, Tsutako Tomioka, in a dangerous world where no one was safe. On the day they died, he swore he felt an indescribable burning in his eyes, as if they had dried up completely, almost devoid of moisture. But currently our beloved Giyu Tomioka was walking through a very friendly town with his sister Tsutako Tomioka, buying food for the week, while Giyu looked at everything analytically, storing in his mind all the memories he could. When they finished, the two went home while Tsutako said something to him. Tsutako. Hey Guy-chan, I have a surprise for you, said a perpetually smiling Tsutako. Giyu. What's wrong, Ni-san? He said, changing his cold attitude to a happy and calm one. Tsutako. Guy-chan, you're going to be an uncle, I'm pregnant, she said happily. Upon hearing that, Giyu's eyes widened and his mouth slightly agape as his sister's words echoed in his mind. He was overprotective of his loved ones, and being told that his sister was no longer pure made his blood boil, But he had to control himself. He was no longer a child with the mind of a 10-year-old. He was a child with the mind of an adult. But not much else happened that day. They simply ate and were ready to sleep, but at midnight a noise in the living room put him on high alert. Peeking out of his bedroom door, he saw a man at his sister's door. He wore strange clothes with striking colors, but what stood out most were his eyes, rainbow-colored eyes with the kanji for upper moon too. He saw him break down the door with some fans as the atmosphere turned cold for no reason. Then he saw the man go in and out, his hands, with sharp claws, holding his older sister by the neck. In his anger, he didn't notice how his eyes turned red with 2 tomo in each one. Giyu went to the kitchen and grabbed a knife from the table, the sharpest one they had for cutting very tough meats, while stealthily approaching the man. When he was close to him he jumped and plunged the knife into his head. The blood that spread over his face was not long in coming, but he saw every drop and did not miss the slightest detail, until the guy threw him against a wall and he turned around, displaying his superiority in the atmosphere. "Kid, you shouldn't play with a knife, you could hurt someone," said the man with a fake smile as he looked at the boy. "Giyu. Leave my sister alone, I won't let you hurt her," he said as he grabbed his knife again and lunged at him, but the man only landed one blow that left him exhausted. "You come to me without introducing yourself first, how rude you are, but I'll tell you my name is Dama, upper moon too," he said smiling. "Tsutako. Please don't hurt him," she said weakly from lack of air. "Dama. Ooh, what a great display of brotherly love, I'm crying," he said, as with a swift movement he knocked Giyu unconscious and began to devour his sister like the demon he is. Chapter 2. Giyu awoke from the unconsciousness he had experienced a few hours earlier. His vision was blurry. Everything was as if it were white. As his vision cleared, many would choose to look around, but what he saw was horrifying. Blood. But not just any blood, the blood of his beloved sister staining her haori. What he saw left him even more devastated than before. His sister's lifeless body, parts of it missing, her face completely covered in blood. "Giyu. No, God, tell me it's a lie," he said as he ran as best he could, holding his shoulder injured by the impact. When he arrived he hugged the body tightly, he didn't care about the blood he had, he just didn't want to let go. "Giyu. Damn you, I'll kill you, damn you Dama," he screamed as his eyes turned red with the 2 tomo, but a third appeared as he cried, and they spun furiously, but due to exhaustion, he became very tired and almost fainted. That day Giyu was determined to find the one who killed his sister. He swore to kill him, no matter what, no matter the consequences. He would kill him in his sister's name. The sun being at its maximum splendor and illuminating Giyu, he would take his sister's cold blood in his hands, raise it where the sun shone, extend them and say, "Giyu. I promise in my sister's name to kill whoever did this to her, even if it costs me my own life," he said, then got up and went to the yard and started digging a hole in which he would bury his already dead sister. But while he was digging he saw something black. Letting himself be carried away by curiosity he continued digging. The more he dug his curiosity grew, until he saw there a black box with dirt. He delicately picked up the box that had a symbol of a fan. The top part red and the bottom part white. Feeling a pang of nostalgia without knowing why, he opened the box and found a rather large scroll and a small note. The first thing he saw was the note, reading the same thing the Tomioka had read, and unable to bear it, he cried even more. But there was something it said about the scroll, and without wasting any time, he opened it. There was nothing there, just white, and he didn't understand what it was, but there was something written on it. Parchment. Focus energy in the eyes to activate the Sharingan. Giyu didn't understand why he was saying that, but he felt something coursing through his body internally. Thinking about the energy he was talking about, he focused it on his eyes. Suddenly, his eyes changed to red with 3 tomo. He looked at the scroll again and saw letters on it. Without wasting any time, he began to read what it said. Parchment. Hello my son, I am Izumi Uchiha. If you're wondering why you can only read the scroll now, it's because you've activated a technique from our extinct clan. The Uchiha clan was known throughout the ancient shinobi world for their technique called the Sharingan, or as people called our eyes, the cursed eyes. These eyes allow you to predict your enemy's movements and copy their abilities, whether jutsu or taijutsu. They can even trap others in illusions if you look them in the eyes, which is why they're considered cursed eyes. These eyes have stages. The first is the 1 tomo stage, which allows you to predict movements, but with some delay. The 2 tomo stage allows you to copy movements and predict them earlier. The 3 tomo stage does the same, but with even more advanced warning. But there's a stage I don't want you to awaken. You might be wondering what it is. It's the Manjikyu Sharingan, the most powerful stage, granting its user various abilities. We only know a few of them, such as Amaterasu, black flames that will never be extinguished unless you put them out. Susanoo, a humanoid armor that provides protection and can be controlled for attack. Kamui, a space-time ability that allows you to teleport anywhere and become intangible for a period of time. And Tsukiyomi. An illusion that traps your opponent and sends them to a world where you are a god. Days or even years will pass in the illusion, while only a second will pass outside. To achieve this stage of the Sharingan, you must witness the death of someone very important to you after obtaining the 3 Tomo. To increase your chances, you must actually kill them. Furthermore, prolonged use of the Manjikyu Sharingan will cause blindness. That's why I don't want you to awaken this stage. However, if you happen to awaken it, there is a seal on this scroll storage where your father's old eyes are kept, because to avoid going blind, you will have to exchange your eyes with those of another user, and your father left them for you just in case. I'm just telling you that further down this scroll are a few things about shinobi, like chakra and how to control it with exercises. We've also left you a technique, or rather a jutsu, which is our clan's signature jutsu. The fire style. Fireball jutsu. We're giving this to you so you can defend yourself and not be in danger, since the demons have destroyed the shinobi world. That's all I can say, son. I'm glad you're reading the scroll, and don't think we never loved you. We always waited for your arrival, but we couldn't be with you longer because of the demons. Goodbye Giyu Uchiha. The team. Izumi Uchiha Itachi Uchiha. Post. Don't be a pervert. When he finished reading the scroll, he began to cry again, promising to make his parents proud by training the Sharingan. So he continued digging and went for his sister's body, buried it, prayed, and then went to train with chakra. Chapter 3. 2 years had passed since Giyu escaped from his home to begin his training. He grabbed some supplies to survive and went to a forest where he began to release his chakra, thus beginning his training. In his first year, he began to control his chakra. Of course, it was very difficult for him because, although it might not seem like it, his chakra was considerable. Being an Uchiha, he needed a lot of chakra to maintain his Sharingan, and this was something he was born with, which made it very difficult. However, he managed to complete walking on trees, but he couldn't walk on water for long because the water was always moving, so he could only maintain it for a short time. Although his control was very good, he began to train his clan's signature technique, the fireball, but it proved impossible because he always burned himself a little. By the second year, he had perfected the fireball technique, so much so that he almost burned down about 10 trees. His chakra control was now perfect, and he spent the last part of that year perfecting his Sharingan, managing to maintain it for a long time. However, as time passed, his chakra increased, not by much, but it did slightly alter his control. Therefore, he constantly meditated to keep his chakra stable, and also trained in Genjutsu, of course on animals, since he didn't like to try it on people, but nothing more happened since he couldn't train any further. Right now he was hunting an animal with an axe to eat. He knew he didn't have money to buy food, so he hunted animals. While he ran, he had his 3 Tomo Sharingan activated to predict what the animal would do and kill it easily. His clothes were very worn and a little small, but one thing was clear about him. His expression was always expressionless, though he didn't realize it was night and that a demon was watching him. As Giyu killed the animal, he was ambushed by the demon, who was about to kill him with his claws. But thanks to his Sharingan, he managed to avoid the attacks with his axe. The demon was surprised and at the same time frightened by Giyu's eyes, since the Uchiha clan was feared by demons because one of them had once become a hunter and caused them a lot of trouble, and they always came out almost unscathed, so he wouldn't trust the little Uchiha. Demon. So you are the bearer of the cursed eyes, he said seriously. Giyu. And you're from the disgusting Dauma race, he said seriously while hiding his anger. Demon. You damn brat, I don't care if you're one of those carriers, but I'm going to kill you. Who knows, maybe I'll steal your eyes and he'll give me more of his blood, he said maniacally. Upon hearing that, Giyu became enraged and went straight at him with his Sharingan rolling furiously. He tried to stab him in the head with the axe, but the demon used his arms to protect himself and then kicked him, sending him flying into a tree. However, he recovered and began to make hand gestures. Giyu. Fire style. Fireball jutsu, he said, expelling a large amount of fire in a ball towards the demon, who was surprised and received the attack. Demon. A scream of pain since the fire was something that did not allow them to regenerate for a while. After Giyu finished with his axe, he went to cut off his head. He knew of his regeneration, so he assumed that he would have to separate his head from his body and wait until dawn. Giyu. Damned one, die. He said as he tried with great effort to cut off the demon's head, but since it wasn't made of the demon hunter's material, it didn't work and the demon put the head back on. Demon. You damned brat. He didn't finish speaking because his head was cut off by a man with a red mask and a long nose. He had clothing similar to water, and in his hand, he had a katana that said Demon Slayer. Kid, are you okay? He said coldly. Giyu. Yes, thank you for your help, he said in the same cold tone, something that surprised the man. Giyu noticed that some kids his own age were with him. One was a girl with a pink flower haori and a flower crown on her head, and her eyes were light blue. The other was an orange-haired boy with semi-silver eyes and a scar on his cheek who had a cold look. Giyu. If you'll excuse me, I'll leave, he said as he turned his back on them and picked up his axe lying on the ground. Wait a minute, how did you survive that demon? The man said seriously. Giyu. I'm simply fighting for my survival, and I'm also looking for a specific demon to kill, he said as he continued walking, but his shoulder was grabbed by the orange-haired boy. Hey, don't talk to our sensei like that, he said somewhat angrily. Giyu. I ask you to leave me alone, he said seriously. What a coward you are to say that and leave. Giyu. You say a man has to trust strangers, you say that even though I already thanked him for helping me and left so as not to bother him, I'm not much of a man. If that's what being a man is, I don't want to imagine what it's like for you, he said without looking at them, but the boy saw for a moment some red eyes that then turned blue. When he finished speaking, the boy didn't know what to say, because Giyu had cornered him like the saying goes, between a rock and a hard place, but his surprise changed when he heard him. Giyu. My apologies for speaking to you like this, but I wasn't in the mood. My name is Giyu, Tomioka Giyuu, he said before saying Uchiha, because he knew that many people didn't like the Uchihas, and they could be the same. My apologies as well, my name is Sabito, he said with a smile. Giyu. It's a pleasure, Sabito-san. If it's not too much trouble, could you also tell me your names? I am Urakadaki Sankoji, and the girl is Mikomo, said the man. Giyu. It's a pleasure, Urakadaki-san and Mikomo-san, he said as he bowed. Thank you again for your help. Urakadaki. One thing, what kind of demon did you say you wanted to kill? Giyu. I don't remember his appearance well, but there is something that characterizes him, his eyes were of many colors, and he had the kanji for upper moon too in his eyes. Upon hearing that, Urakadaki became more serious, for she knew what he meant by that. Urakadaki. Hey kid, you won't be able to kill that demon if you're not a hunter, and you don't have a hunter's sword. Giyu. During this time I have been looking for a hunter to train me. Urakadaki. Child, I offer you the opportunity to be my disciple in killing demons. I've seen that you are very skilled. What do you say? Giyu. I accept anything to avenge my sister against that demon. Chapter 4. 2 more years passed. During that time, Giyu trained with Urakadaki. Sabito and Mikomo weren't left behind and also trained, although surpassing Giyu was almost impossible, since Giyu was a prodigy in the art of the sword, and his advances were monstrous, since he already completely mastered the water breathing in only about 6 months, while Sabito and Mikomo could only master it to a certain extent. In their first year, they didn't get along very well, since Sabito was somewhat proud and Giyu was very distant, but thanks to Mikomo they became great friends. However, Sabito and Mikomo saw a side of Giyu they had never seen before. He was actually shy and somewhat clumsy, so his mask of someone serious hid it very well. In their second year, Giyu asked the two of them if they knew anything about the shinobi world. They answered about the 5 ancient villages that had been exterminated by demons, but the question that would change everything was the one he posed. What did they think of the Uchiha clan? This question took both boys by surprise, but they answered. Mikomo thought they were powerful and arrogant, but that his parents had told him before they died that some were like that, while others cared for others. Sabito replied that he thought they were cool because of their eyes, but that he found it a little unfair that they could learn so quickly. That answer was enough for Giyu to show them his eyes, which initially surprised them, but their friendship remained unchanged. They were now at the gates of the final selection. They thought they could pass since they had cut through the stone. They were nervous, but Giyu was wearing a fox mask, and his sister's red haori, Sabito had a green and yellow one with squares, while Mikomo was wearing a pink one with flowers. The test had begun and the three quickly ran into the forest. The demons that passed near them were quickly beheaded without wasting time. That's how the days passed, or rather about 6 days, and they had no problems killing the demons. That was the last day they would have to survive to become hunters, but a huge green demon with many arms stood in front of them. Of hands. Oh, but they are some of my other beloved little foxes, she said while smiling a little. Sabito. Little foxes, he said, confused. Of hands. Yes, those masks prove they are Urakadaki's apprentices. I kill his apprentices, since that bastard trapped me here, hahaha, he said laughing. Sabito and Mikomo got very angry and without thinking went to attack him, but Giyu was serious. He was calm because he knew that something like this could happen in the test, so he went to help his companions. Mikomo was running around him and giving him some cuts, and Sabito went straight for him. Sabito. Water breathing, 8th form. Waterfall Lake, he said to try to cut the demon, and Mikomo was also about to cut him, and Giyu had planned something to help them, but it was too late. Sabito's sword broke as soon as he tried to cut him, and Mikomo was caught by his arms. Suddenly the demon with a fist made Sabito's head be crushed and his blood fly out, and also tore off Mikomo's arms and legs and then ate them. Of hands. They were good, but you're missing, little foxes, but it's your turn, little fox, he said before going to attack Giyu, but Giyu noticed something, everything was different, and he hurt himself and came out of an illusion that the demon of hands made. Upon emerging from the illusion, he saw his friends fighting the demon, and both were already tired, but he had a pain in his eyes. Suddenly, a word came to his mind, and removing his mask, he said. Giyu. Amaterasu, he said while Sabito and Mikomo were in front of the demon, but they saw something that impressed them, the demon was with black flames and did not stop screaming. Of hands. What's happening? Why am I burning? He said desperately, as the fire was spreading rapidly and wouldn't go out. Sabito. Did Giyu do something? He wondered, turning around to see the one who had surprised him, and Makaman, who had also seen him. Giyu's eyes had changed, they were still red, but it seemed that a kind of stain had spread in his eyes, and it was black, but the most surprising thing was that he had a tear of blood. Mikomo. What happened to you, Giyu? She said worriedly. Giyu. It's okay, leave it to me, he said seriously as he painstakingly extinguished the black fire and with his sword went to kill the demon without any difficulty. Sabito and Mikomo were surprised because Giyu extinguished that fire and cut off the demon's head without any difficulty. Sabito. Giyu, what were those eyes? He said, worried about his friend. Giyu. Eyes. He said to see his reflection in his sword and was surprised to see the Manjikyu Sharingan. He assumed it was because of the illusion, but suddenly he felt a pain in his eyes and covered them. Giyu. Og, he said as he covered his eye and his vision blurred for a moment. Sabito. Giyu, are you alright? He said worriedly. Giyu. If I'm alright, I'll explain about those eyes later. So the two decided to finish the test and then rest. Chapter 5. The three hunters had left the test, they had already chosen their materials for their nincharitos. In the test 2 boys had also passed, one being a white-haired boy with scars and a girl with long hair with butterfly clips, but we will concentrate on them now that they had arrived at an inn to rest and incidentally talk about Giyu's eye. They were all talking in one room. Mikomo. Okay Giyu, we want you to explain what those eyes are, she said seriously because it was strange. Sabito. And we want all the information, he said, equally serious. Giyu. Well, the eyes you saw were the Manjikyu Sharingan, the strongest evolution of the Sharingan. Sabito. But why did you wake them up? Giyu. I had no intention of awakening these eyes for the price that had to be paid to obtain it, he said somewhat sadly. Mikomo. What is the price? Giyu. To obtain it, one must suffer great pain, more specifically the death of a loved one, whether it be your best friend or a family member you cared about a lot, but if someone wants to awaken the eyes with a greater chance, they have to kill them with their own hands, he said very sadly. Sabito. But you didn't kill us or see us die, how did you wake him up? He said, confused. Giyu. The demon put me in an illusion where he showed me that you two died because of me, making me think that he killed you for not helping much, he said, while letting out a tear. When he finished saying that, Sabito and Mikomo saw that he was very sad and hugged him to calm him down. Once he was calm, they decided to continue. Mikomo. One question, what were those black flames? She said doubtfully, for that doubt would not leave her. Giyu. That's one of the eye abilities, called Amaterasu, black flames that will never be extinguished, not even by rain, until the target disappears or I decide to extinguish them, he said seriously. Sabito. Impressive, with that ability you can kill several demons without difficulty, he said excitedly. Mikomo. Sabito is right, she said, somewhat calmly but excitedly. Giyu. I'd like to say the same, but I can't, he said seriously. Sabito. Why do you say that? He said, not understanding. Giyu. You know there are prices for power, and in this case, if I use the Manjikyu too much, I'll go blind over time, he said very seriously, and his friends looked worried. Sabito. But there's no way to stop that, he said worriedly. Giyu. There is one, but an expert will be needed for an operation with my eyes. I have to get the eyes of someone who obtained the Manjikyu. Mikomo. But there's no one with those eyes besides you, she said, confused. Giyu. My parents, before dying from demons, left me my father's eyes, which awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan. That's settled, but I doubt there's anyone who can swap my eyes with my father's, he said seriously. Mikomo. Don't get ahead of yourself, Giyu. I understand your Akadaki-sensei had surgery once for a near-fatal injury. If we tell him about your eyes, he could tell us the location of that place so they can replace them, she said, already proposing a solution. Sabito. Mikomo is right, if they change your eyes you'll be able to use them more freely. Giyu. Ito seems good, but I have to think about it, plus I'll also have to tell your Akadaki-sensei about this. Sabito. I'm sure sensei will understand, he said, smiling. Mikomo. One question, Giyu, do those eyes have any other abilities? She said curiously. Giyu. According to what I know, I have more abilities. One is an illusion in which I am practically a god who can do anything to my enemy. In the illusion, it seems like days or even years, while outside it's only a second, he said seriously, and his companion seemed surprised. Giyu. Another one is an ability called Kamui that has two functions, one is to be able to become intangible, and the other is to be able to teleport to any place. The surprise of his companions was much greater. Giyu. Another one is the Susanoo, a kind of skeleton or humanoid figure that serves as a shield and at the same time an attack, or well that's what I know, since I don't know if there are more, he said with a smile. Bo's surprise caused a shout of "Nani" from his two companions, because with those skills their friend was invincible. Makomo. With those skills you were more than invincible, she said with her mouth open. Tsubito. She's right, even if we train we couldn't pass you, he said somewhat sadly. Giyu. Don't be discouraged, I think you can only have two abilities, I already know which one of them is Amaterasu, but the other could be any one, he said, and the spirits of the two rose a little. Then the next morning the three went to Urakadaki's house. When they arrived they celebrated and then Giyu told him about his Sharingan. Urakadaki was surprised, but it wasn't noticeable because of his mask. At first he didn't take it very well, but then things were sorted out. Then they told him about the Manjikyu and he told them a place where he could change his eyes. After that, a few days passed during which he was able to change his eyes, but he didn't dare to use them. Chapter 6. Giyu, along with Sabito and Makomo, were receiving their nincharitos. The people who gave them the swords were rather strange, as they began to torture them simply because the swords were blue. They were also told that if they broke the swords, they would be killed, which sent a chill down their spines. After the group left, Sabito received a mission from his crow, as did Makomo. Giyu, however, had a different mission in a village where a demon was stalking the people. Sabito and Makomo left, and Giyu, wearing his kitsune mask, departed. His attire was red on one side and red on the other, similar to Sabito's Haori, which Sabito didn't particularly like. Giyu only wore it as a memento for when they had to part ways, and, in his sensei's words, it looked good. The mask was because he wanted to keep his eyes hidden, since people might be afraid of him if they saw his red eyes, but without wasting time he went on his mission. On the way it was getting dark, and that did not benefit him, since he would arrive late if it was night. When night fell, he had already reached the village, and with his Sharingan, he searched for a presence different from that of people, and saw it entering a house. Without wasting time, he entered through a destroyed door and saw something that saddened him. The demon had wiped out the family. Blood was everywhere. Without wasting time, he went to kill it when it was about to kill some girls who were afraid. Giyu. Die, you bastard. He said, then made a cut that missed because the demon noticed and protected himself with an arm, then sent Giyu flying against a wall. Demon. Damned human, don't interrupt my meal, he said, then with his claws he tried to kill Giyu, but Giyu put his ninchurito in front of him and protected himself from the superhuman strength he had, then he moved away and in a quick movement was behind the demon and cut off his head. Giyu. I'm finally done, he said, sounding a little tired. Who are you? Said one of the girls who had pink eyes and long black hair, who was hugging another girl with purple eyes and short black hair with purple tips. Giyu. My name is Giyu Tomioka, Demon Slayer, he said seriously, still with his mask preventing anyone from seeing his face. Well, Tomioka-san, thank you very much for helping us, she said, relieved. My name is Kani Kocho. I am Shinobu Kocho, nice to meet you, said the other girl, staring intently at Giyu. Giyu. Okay, it's a pleasure too, but one question. Don't you have any other family members you could live with? He said worriedly because he couldn't leave them alone, but at that moment a huge guy in a hunter's outfit arrived. What happened here? Said the man, and it was clear that he was blind. Giyu. A demon attacked the Kocho family, I eliminated it, but I don't know if they have another relative they can live with, he said seriously, something that surprised the man. Well done, kid. My name is Jayame Himejima, the rock pillar, the man said calmly, much to Giyu's surprise. Giyu. Are you Urakadaki-sensei's partner? He said in surprise. Himejima. Yes, it seemed like I was one of his students, but I'll tell you that you did well to come and save the girls, he said happily. Giyu. About that, I didn't arrive in time, the demon wiped out the family, I wasn't fast enough and I couldn't prevent it, he said sadly, lowering his head, that's why I asked them if they had any other relatives. Hanny. We're still here, but to answer your question, we don't have any family, she said sadly while crying. Giyu. I can't do anything about that, he said seriously. Himejima-san, can you help them? Himejima. If I can help them, I appreciate your help. Giyu. Okay, then I'll have to retire for my next mission, he said seriously as he left. All the girls watched the figure who saved them from that demon, not knowing if they would ever see him again. Giyu simply headed off on another mission. Time skip 3 years, I know I do too many time skips, but it's so I don't waste time. Giyu was 17 years old at the time. He never removed his mask without revealing his face. However, he invented a new water-breathing stance, which now had 11 stances. The 11th, calm, was for defense against demon attacks, although it wasn't very useful for offense. But now he was with his sensei and his friends at the hunter's headquarters, because Urakadaki summoned them to that place without knowing the reason. In front of them was the head of the organization, the patron, Kagayubayashiki, who looked at them calmly. Urakadaki. Guys, do you know why I summoned you here? He said seriously, to which his students shook their heads and the boss began to speak. Master. The reason is that Urakadaki is retiring from his position as water pillar, having already chosen one of you as his successor, he said calmly, and the three were surprised except for Giyu, who knew of his sensei's advanced age, so it was logical. Giyu assumed it would be Mikomo and Sabito because he thought he was weak, so he smiled inside his mask, but the following words surprised them. Boss. Well, Urakadaki, who do you choose as the new pillar? He said calmly. Urakadaki. I choose Giyu Tomioka as my successor, he said seriously. At this, Sabito and Mikomo smiled, and Giyu was surprised because his sensei would choose him. Giyu. Excuse me for what I'm about to say, Oyakata-sama and Urakadaki-sensei, but why am I, he said in his neutral tone. Sabito. Giyu, why are you asking that? It's more than obvious why. Urakadaki. Giyu, you created the 11th form and killed many demons in a short time. Those are the reasons, in addition to your skill with the sword, he said seriously. Giyu. But sensei, according to what you told me, you have to kill a specific number of demons or kill one of the demon moons. Besides, if we talk about skill, Sabito surpasses me in that, or if we talk about speed and agility, Mikomo is better for the position, he said seriously because he felt weak. Mikomo. Giyu, you're lying, we don't surpass you in that, it's just that you don't appreciate yourself, she said, smiling. Besides, sensei already told us some time ago that you would be the next pillar, that's why you were selected. Sabito. I wanted the position, but you are more skilled and qualified for it, he said, still smiling. Boss. Well Giyu, what do you say? According to your colleagues, you're very good for the job, he said calmly. Giyu. Sigh, I accept the position of water pillar, he said normally, but without showing his worried face because of his mask. Chapter 7. Note. Before starting the chapter, I realized my mistake. I said that Kani was in the final selection and that Giyu later saved her after her family died. I forgot to mention that Kani was celebrating with her family for becoming a demon slayer, but she didn't receive her ninchurin in time and they were attacked and Giyu saved her. End of note. Right now, Giyu was being introduced to the other pillars who would be the pillars of rock, sound, wind, flower, and flame. Giyu was currently the new water pillar, but in his own words, he didn't deserve the position, thinking that his friend deserved it more than him. But he only accepted for their sake. He didn't know about any of them because his master never spoke of them. Master. Well, that concludes that Giyu Tomioka is the new water pillar, said the master calmly. After a while, a meeting they had was over and Giyu was about to leave, but he was stopped by one of the pillars, who was Himejima. Himejima. It's good to be back, Giyu said, the rock pillar that Giyu recognized calmly. Giyu. It's also good to see Himejima-san, he said, bowing, and the others watching noticed that he was respectful. Himejima. I know you don't know any of us, so they're going to introduce themselves, she said, gesturing for the others to introduce themselves. Nice to meet you, my name is Yuzui Tenjin, the flamboyant sound pillar, said a tall boy who had a jeweled forehead protector and jeweled earrings and a tattoo on his eye, along with two very large swords on his back. Giyu. It's a pleasure, Tenjin-san, he said respectfully while bowing. I remember you, you're the one from the final selection, TSK. I'm Sanemi Shinasagawa, said a boy with white hair covered in scars and with his chest uncovered. Giyu. It's a pleasure, Shinasagawa-san, he said again, bowing slightly in pain as he was starting to feel it. Kani. I think I know you, said Kani Kocho, the flower pillar who was previously saved by Giyu 3 years ago. Giyu. I'm sorry, but I don't think so, he said in his serious voice. Kani. Now I remember, you helped me and my sister with that demon, she said with a smile as she remembered the mask, surprising the pillars. Giyu. I'm sorry, but I don't remember her, he said with an apologetic bow. Kani. Moo, what do you mean no, I'm Kani Kocho, she said with a pout, making the others laugh, but Giyu's expression didn't change, or rather his face couldn't be seen because of the mask. Giyu. I don't remember what I said, he said seriously, unable to recall the name. Saying that made Kani sad, but she didn't show it. 3 years ago, she wanted to see Giyu again, or rather, his face. She wanted to see the face of the boy who saved her and her sister. Giyu. If you'll excuse me, I'll take my leave, he said normally, and the others nodded. The flame pillar was not there because he had been drunk for a long time. When it was all over, Giyu had a solo mission, but we will not focus on him, but on Kani, who was arriving at the estate with a sad expression that was noticed by the girls of the estate and her sister Shinobu. A while passed and Shinobu entered her sister's room and saw that she was sad while a tear came out, something that worried her. "Shinobu? Ni-san, what happened?" she asked, very worried. "Kani? Shinobu, I found him," she said somewhat quietly, but Shinobu, who heard well, was surprised and her worried expression turned to one of despair. "Shinobu? Where is he, where is Tomioka-san?" she said desperately and happily. "Kani? He is the new water pillar, but he doesn't remember me," said Trait. As she said that, a tear fell from Shinobu's eye. She too wanted to thank him for what he did for them 3 years ago, but she couldn't if he didn't remember her. "Shinobu? You're joking, right?" she said sadly, her head down. "Kani? No, it isn't," she said, already crying, while Shinobu gave her a hug and was also crying. Both sisters, without knowing it, would begin to feel something for Giyu. He saved them without caring about his life, he protected them, he gave them security. After a while the sisters went on a mission where there was a demon. It said that they would have the company of a pillar, without specifying who. They both got ready and wasted no time. It was already night and they would arrive a little late, but when they arrived they saw him, Giyu, fighting with a lower moon. The sisters saw that he could easily dodge all the demon's techniques and quickly cut off his head, but in a mistake the demon scratched his mask and left a wound on his shoulder. "Demon? At least I hurt you, human," he said angrily, but he fell silent when he saw a very red eye with 3 blades through the opening of the mask and realized who he was fighting. "Giyu? Die," he said, throwing the demon's body far away, where it then disappeared. "Giyu? My mask hurts," he said somewhat angrily, since his mask was a way to use his Sharingan without anyone noticing. "Kani? Well, I see you're finished," she said, emerging from her hiding place to see her partner. "Giyu? Kocho-san, what are you doing here?" he said normally while turning off his Sharingan so that they wouldn't notice, leaving only his blue eye visible. "Kani? I was sent here to help because they told me it was a moon, but we see you finished," she said smiling. "Giyu? Shall we see?" he said, confused. "Shinobu? I accompanied her on the mission," said Shinobu, smiling as she looked at Giyu. "Giyu? Who is she?" he said seriously as he put his hand on his wound. "Shinobu? I'm Shinobu Kocho," she said with a fake smile because it hurt her to know that he didn't remember her. "Giyu? I suppose you're related to Kocho-san," he said normally while feeling dizzy because his wound hurt. "Kani? Yes, she is my sister," she said, then watched as Giyu fell unconscious from the wound as he reacted too late to stop the bleeding. When the sisters saw this, they grabbed him and took him to an inn to care for him. Chapter 8. Giyu lay unconscious on a futon in one of the rooms of a wisteria house, being bandaged for his shoulder wound. He still wore his mask, which was slightly broken, revealing his closed eye. The Kocho sisters were helping him, worried about him since he had saved them, and now it was their turn to help him. They were curious to see Giyu's face, as he never removed his mask. "Shinobu? Ni-san, why do you think he wears the mask?" she said doubtfully. "Kani? I don't know, I suppose it will be the same as Urakadaki-san, but I have doubts about what his face will look like." "Shinobu? Should we take off his mask?" she said hopefully, hoping he would say yes. "Kani? I'm going to take off his mask," she said as she brought her face closer. Kani placed her hand on the mask and carefully removed it while sweating a little, and Shinobu was also sweating a little. When she finished removing the mask, they looked at him with a blush, a beautiful face according to her words, it was somewhat pale, and his calm expression made him look better. The sisters couldn't help but notice every detail of Giyu's face, but they saw how he began to get up. Since Giyu didn't have his chakra restored, he didn't have his Sharingan, and they saw blue eyes that looked like the waters of the sea, and his blush increased. "Giyu? What happened?" he asked without looking at the sisters because he was confused and felt more air on his face. "Kani? And nothing's wrong," she said nervously. "Shinobu? Nina-san, why you're right, it's okay," she said, equally nervous. "Giyu? I see, but I noticed she wasn't wearing her mask. Where's my mask?" he said seriously while looking at them but not noticing the blush. "Kani? We removed your mask so you could breathe more air," she said more calmly while continuing to look at his face. "Giyu? I understand, thank you Kocho-san," he said, thanking her, and Kani found it endearing. "Can you return my mask?" "Shinobu? I'm sorry Tomioka-san, but your mask was destroyed in the battle," she said as she tore the mask in two with her hands behind her back, wanting to see more of his face. "Giyu? I have to ask Urakadaki-sensei for another mask," he thought as he got up to go to headquarters, and the sisters followed him. Upon arriving at headquarters, the three gave the report of what happened with the demon. After that, Giyu was going to head to his estate, but a certain eccentric pillar stood in front of him. "Yuzui? Hello, who are you?" he said smiling. "Giyu? I am Giyu Yuzui-san, only I have my mask on, he said seriously while looking at Yuzui. Yuzui. Oh, okay, but how about a friendly match? He said, smiling. Giyu. I don't see the problem, so yes, he said somewhat smiling because although it may not seem like it, I like to fight. Yuzui. Okay, let's go. So the two went to Yuzui's estate and went to a training field. Yuzui had his swords and Giyu only had his ninjutsu. Yuzui. Tomioka, I want you to know that I am a shinobi, so my fighting style is different, he said smiling as he struck a taijutsu pose. Giyu. So you don't mind if I do this? He said as he assumed an Uchiha taijutsu stance with his sword. Yuzui's eyes widened at the pose, recognizing that fighting stance, and he couldn't help but ask. Yuzui. You're an Uchiha, he said in surprise. Giyu did not respond, his eyes were covered by his hair, and then he stared at Giyu and saw the 3 Tomo Sharingan in Giyu's eyes. Yuzui. I see, I didn't know there was a survivor from that clan, but that makes the fight more sense, it will be like a shinobi fight, he said, smiling as he went towards Giyu, who was serious and watching Yuzui attentively. Yuzui tried to slash him, but Giyu dodged and tried to counterattack, but Yuzui blocked it and saw a smile on Giyu's face, not an arrogant one like other Uchiha, but one of joy and admiration. He smiled back and they continued their fight with great enjoyment. After the fight was over, Giyu told him not to tell anyone about his Sharingan because he didn't know if he could trust them. Yuzui made the promise and then they went to the butterfly estate to heal his wounds. Giyu was walking with difficulty because despite his Sharingan, Yuzui made strong cuts and also his experience in shinobi arts was remarkable. When the sisters arrived, they wanted to be with Giyu and sent Yuzui with the girls so they could take care of Giyu. Panny. Ara Tomioka-san, what happened that caused you to be injured? She said with a smile while bandaging Giyu's chest, which had some wounds. Giyu. A fight with Yuzui, he said seriously. Shinobu. Ara, so why did they fight? Giyu. It was just a friendly fight that turned into something more, he said while not looking at them. After they finished treating him, they left him in the room to rest, but they kept looking at him through a hole in the door. The sisters didn't know why, but a feeling was growing within them, their chests were beating strongly, and a blush was appearing on their faces. Annie Shinobu. Because we can't stop looking at you, they said, very red-faced. Chapter 9. Giyu was just waking up, more or less recovered, but he felt watched. He didn't want to use his Sharingan because if they were really watching him, he'd be in trouble. So, using some chakra, he realized they were at the door and went there in a quick movement, opening it and seeing the Kocho sisters, who were a little red-faced. Giyu. What's wrong? He said seriously. Kanny. No, it's nothing, she said nervously as Shinobu hid behind Kanny, blushing furiously. Giyu. Well, I guess I'm recovered now, so I'll go, he said, then started to walk away, but his sleeve was grabbed by Shinobu, who gathered her strength to speak to him. Shinobu. To Tomioka-san, see, could he stay, he still needs to recover a little, she said, blushing. Giyu. If there's no other option, it'll have to be this way, he said, returning to his room and lying down on the bed to rest. Upon hearing that, the sisters were pleased and went to prepare some food, as it was almost lunchtime, and they were hungry. Furthermore, they would have to begin Giyu's training for his recovery, so they would be happy to be with him. A little time passed and Kanny and Shinobu finished their meal and went to the entrance of Giyu's room and woke him up. Giyu. What happened? He said, confused. Kanny. Ara, I don't think you woke up well, Giyu, she said smiling. Giyu. That didn't happen, but why are you calling me by my name? He said, confused. Shinobu. That's right, Ni-san, I want to call him by his name too, she said with a pout, surprising Giyu. Giyu. Why do they want to call me by my name? He said, confused. Kanny. Can't we be friends, Giyu? She said with a pout, just like Shinobu. Giyu. Okay. That's weird, but I guess it's okay. But I can also call you by your names, he said seriously. Shinobu. Ara, do you want a relationship? She said mockingly. Giyu. It's not because of that, it's just that if I talk to you too, it would be strange to call you by your last name, since you have the same one, and it could be confusing, he said seriously but somewhat embarrassed. Kanny. If there's no problem, she said smiling. Giyu. Okay, but what did you come here for? He said doubtfully. He is serious, but not so serious that he gets along badly with others. Kanny. Oh yes, we've come to tell you that your recovery training will begin, she said with a smile as she clasped her hands and closed her eyes. Giyu didn't understand, but they explained that it was for this reason, so he agreed to feel better. The two went to a room and started with the cup game, which Kanny would be in charge of. Kanny. Alright Giyu, we'll start right now. First, let's test your reflexes. Each of us will lift a glass and try to spill the medicine into the other. You'll also have to block the ones I try to throw by putting your hand on top of the glass. Got it? she said smiling, and Giyu just nodded. So the two began. Kanny quickly grabbed a glass and tried to spill it on Giyu, but he easily stopped her, and vice versa. They spent some time like this until Giyu strayed a little and ended up getting wet with the medicine. Kanny? You're good, but you're missing Giyu, she said smiling as she looked at Giyu, who had a lost look. Giyu? Looks like I lost, I have to do it again, he asked. Kanny? Yes, until we see some progress. So they started again, but Giyu was more attentive to his surroundings since he didn't want to make any mistakes. This time Giyu was able to prevent Kanny from putting the glass down, but he was respectful and placed the glass on her head. Kanny? Huh? She said doubtfully as she felt the glass on her head. Giyu? I'm sorry, but I didn't mean to spill the medicine, he said normally, and Kanny's cheeks turned pink. Kanny? Well, we have to keep going, she said nervously. Giyu? Okay. Then he was standing in front of Shinobu. Shinobu? Well Giyu, now you need to catch me. I'm going to run and you'll have to catch me to pass the training, she said smiling. Giyu? Understood. He said sympathetically. So Giyu tried to catch her, but saw nothing because Shinobu was already running fast, so he went faster, managing to get more or less close to her, but it was difficult for him to maintain the speed, so without wasting time he breathed and increased his speed, barely managing to grab her hand. Giyu? I think I won, he said, breathing heavily as he let go of Shinobu's hand, which was somewhat red. Kanny? Okay, now comes the last one, in this one we'll have to stretch your body. Giyu? Okay, what do I have to do? He said normally. Kanny? Just sit on the floor and we'll take care of it, she said, smiling but blushing slightly. Giyu? Understood, he said, sitting down. Shinobu? Okay, let's begin, she said, smiling. They stood behind him and each stretched out one of his arms and Giyu couldn't help but feel pain. Then they pushed him to the ground, putting their foot on his back and stretching out each leg. Finally, each of them pulled on a part of him, Kanny his legs and Shinobu his arms, and that was it. Giyu? That hurt, he said with a chibi face and a tear. Kanny? Come on, it's not that big of a deal, she said, smiling. Giyu? Imagine it's me doing that to you, how would you feel? He said normally, but the sisters imagined that and blushed because they ended up thinking about something else, not so holy. Giyu? Hey, are you okay? He said, putting his hand in front of them and moving it to see if they would react. Man. Shinobu. Both sisters said this upon noticing Giyu's actions and decided to drop the subject later since Giyu was about to leave after completing his training and had just received a mission with Yuzui in a town where many people were disappearing. Giyu? I think I'd better go, he said, then ran off. The sisters were saddened, but unholy thoughts began to return to their minds and they blushed and decided to leave. Chapter 10. 2 years had passed in which the pillars were well related, or well some of them, Giyu did not talk much with them, but he answered them so as not to be rude, the only one with whom he spoke as a friend was Yuzui and a little with Kanny and Shinobu. Now Giyu and Yuzui were going to headquarters to deliver the report on the mission they had, since they finished it with ease, lately the demons had been less active and that worried the hunters, and even though there are no demons. Now they had given the report and were heading to their estates. Giyu, at his estate, was calmly thinking about some unimportant things, but he was called for a meeting with the pillars. He went quickly since he knew that the meetings were not for anything, but the meeting was not just to talk about demons. When he arrived, he greeted them respectfully and Yuzui approached him to talk a little while the boss arrived. When he arrived, he told them all about demons and that it was suspected the moons were moving, but there was another reason because there was another announcement. Boss. Well my children, the other reason you are here is because there are 3 new pillars, in addition to informing you that Shinjiro has withdrawn due to his alcohol issues, he said somewhat sadly, but the others did nothing, they just waited. Boss. Well, here are the new 3 pillars, he said, signaling for 3 people to step forward. One was a tall boy with yellow hair and red tips, a big smile, and a white cape with flames at the end. Nice to meet you, my name is Kaijiro Ringoku, the new flame pillar, he said, smiling excitedly. Another was a girl with long pink hair and green tips, green eyes and a shy expression. She wore a white haori, but her uniform was very different, she had an uncovered chest and a skirt. My name is Mitsuri Kanroji, nice to meet you all, she said, bowing. The last one was a boy with heterochromia who had a serious look, a snake wrapped around his neck with bandages on his face and a white haori with black lines. My name is Iguro Abanai, he said curtly without introducing himself properly to the others. Everything proceeded normally as there was nothing else to report. Everyone introduced themselves, but Giyu, who was wearing his mask, didn't fully introduce himself. He only stated his name and left. Iguro had a bad impression of him, but the other pillars explained that he didn't talk much and that speaking was difficult for him. After that, Mitsuri was sent on a mission with Giyu to kill a demon suspected to be a moon. The two went quickly. Along the way, no one said anything, firstly because Giyu didn't speak at all on missions, and secondly because Mitsuri was nervous, but she was the first to speak. Mitsuri. Tomioka-san, what's it like being a pillar? She said curiously. Tomioka. Not very different from a normal hunter, just a rank in my opinion that defines your strength, he said seriously. Mitsuri. But there's nothing more I can say, she said hesitantly. Tomioka. Even though you're a pillar, that doesn't change the fact that you're a hunter just like everyone else, only you represent one who holds the organization's hope so they can keep fighting. By the way, they never mentioned that you're a pillar, he said curiously. Mitsuri. Oh, that's right, I am the pillar of love since I created my own type of breathing, she said, smiling at the words spoken by Giyu. Then they arrived at the demon's place and saw that it was not a demon of the 12 moons, so they killed it easily and decided to leave, but the demon destroyed its mask, showing its face with its red eyes and surprising Mitsuri. Mitsuri. To Tomioka-san, why are your eyes like that? She said, sounding a little scared. Giyu. I'm sorry but I can't tell you anything about this, please don't tell anyone, she said somewhat pleadingly, apparently she didn't know about the Uchihas. The trip was normal, but no one said anything, they just went to headquarters and gave the report, then to the butterfly estate to treat some wounds they had, and Giyu had a scratch on his face from the mask. Back at the estate, the two were taken care of, but Mitsuri noticed that Kani was looking at Giyu a lot, as was Shinobu's little sister, which made her squeal internally. Then Giyu and Mitsuri were alone, but Kani and Shinobu watched jealously but couldn't hear anything. Mitsuri. Tomioka-san, can you tell me about those eyes you had on the mission, and why they're blue now? Giyu. These eyes are the legacy of my family, the Sharingan of the Uchiha clan, and so he went on to tell her about her eyes, her extinct clan, and the death of her sisters. Mitsuri was surprised by what Giyu said and felt sad for him, so she hugged him, and Giyu, after a long time, showed an emotion that was sadness and cried on her shoulder. But the sisters were jealous of what they saw and were already determined, Giyu was close to them, and they would discover why he seemed to be hiding something. Chapter 11. The time had passed when Giyu, Yuzui, and Mitsuri got along well. Giyu wasn't very social, but the two of them helped him to be a little more confident, so he was a little more expressive, but he still hid his Sharingan. Although the sisters were jealous because Mitsuri spent so much time with Giyu, it was as if he were taking something away from them, but now Giyu was at his estate resting a bit because the missions were much more difficult because they had to go further every day, but a knock on the door surprised him, he had no visitors, so he decided to go and see. When he opened the door, he saw his friends Sabito and Makomo there. They were both looking at him with smiles on their faces, but he saw something that surprised him greatly. They were holding hands. He knew something about Mitsuri's love, which always gave him clues about these things. Giyu. What a surprise to see you here, he said with a smile. Sabito. Well, yes, the missions don't allow us to be together, so we decided to visit you since we have no other choice, but tell me what's new, he said with a big smile. Makomo. Yes, tell us, Giyu. Tell your brothers what happened, she said, since they had a brotherly relationship. Giyu. Well, nothing new happened, just more missions and killing demons, so there's not much to say, but come in, don't stay outside, he said, inviting them inside. The two entered the estate, saw that it was very large and were surprised, but they brought up a topic to test their skills. Sabito. Hey Giyu, what do you think about training to see if we can surpass you with your Sharingan? He said very excitedly. Makomo. I want one too, she said excitedly. Giyu simply nodded and put on his mask before going out to the courtyard to begin training. Sabito went straight to him with Ninchurito in his hands, along with Makomo. The two of them thought about their next stance. Sabito Makomo. Water breathing, third form. Dance of currents, they both thought to go after Giyu, who did not expect that, the two combined the same form to cover and attack at the same time. Giyu. I think I should take this seriously, he thought, having to dodge the attack with his Sharingan with some difficulty, but it didn't help much, since almost all of his attacks were blocking an escape. Giyu. Water breathing, sixth form. Winding whirlpool, but to twist his horn and turn and block the attacks as best he could. After that, Sabito was behind him. Sabito. Water breathing, eighth form. Waterfall ache, he said, attempting a vertical slash, but Giyu quickly blocked the attack with the next attack. Giyu. Water breathing, seventh form. Piercing raindrops, he said to lunge against Sabito's attack, managing to block it, but he noticed that Makomo started to spin around. Makomo. Water breathing, ninth form. Chaotic splash, she said, circling around and getting close, making cuts that Giyu had to move in order to dodge. They lasted like this for a long time until Sabito and Makomo were standing with their ninchuritos on the ground as a means of support, while Giyu stood with injuries, but only breathing somewhat tired but maintaining energy. Giyu. I must say they have improved a lot, their level allows them to damage me with my Sharingan activated, I feel they have the level of a pillar he said, removing his mask and showing a smile. Upon hearing this, the two were very surprised by Giyu's words and were smiling, but Giyu said something that left them thoughtful for a while. Giyu. But there's a condition for giving my proposal to the boss he said seriously, looking at them. Sabito. What is it? He said seriously. Makomo. What condition she said, sounding somewhat worried. Giyu. The condition is that I want a nephew or niece he said, looking at them with a smile on his face. The two of them blushed deeply at what Giyu said and couldn't help but give him a smack on the head that left him stunned. Giyu. I just wanted a niece-nephew he said with anime-style tears. Then they all went to the butterfly estate to be taken care of, but Sabito and Makomo saw that Shinobu and Kani were very close to Giyu, but he didn't notice because of his innocence, so they were both going to try something to embarrass Giyu. Sabito. Hey Giyu, is one of them your partner? Sabito said smiling, looking at Giyu who was confused, but Shinobu and Kani were very flushed. Giyu. If you mean a co-worker for the demons, yes, from time to time I have to go on missions with them, he said with a smile on his face, and everyone was surprised by Giyu's great innocence. Thus they just spent the rest of the day Sabito and Makomo trying to embarrass Giyu, but instead of him being embarrassed, it was the sisters who looked like tomatoes who were embarrassed, until in a moment of carelessness, one of them fell on top of Giyu being very close to his face, and they saw for the first time Giyu embarrassed by the closeness. Giyu. Kocho-san, can you please move aside? He said nervously, and Sabito, Makomo, and Kani were surprised by that. Shinobu. Oh of course she said, very red, as she left the room. Everyone was laughing, but Kani was jealous of it. Chapter 12. A month had passed in which the Kocho sisters obtained no information about him or the secret he held, so they became more discouraged every day. They currently had a mission in a village where a demon was killing many women. Once in the village, they began asking about the disappearances and were told that it happened at night and that only women disappeared. The worst part was that some people noticed nothing but a great coldness in the air. After much questioning, the sisters reached a night state in which they noticed the demon, the same demon that killed Giyu's sister with rainbow eyes that said upper moon too, something that worried both sisters, although Kani was a pillar and Shinobu her Tsuguko, they knew that the battle would not be easy. Premier Kani went to attack Dauma without wasting time, so that the victory would be immediate, but Dauma stopped a vertical cut from her with his fans, while creating some ice. Dauma. What a lack of manners he said, smiling. Shinobu also went after him, trying to hit him with a poison injector, but he easily blocked it with a fan. Then Kani, taking advantage of this, came out and tried to cut off his arms, but she could only cut one, since the other quickly sent Shinobu flying, and then blocked Kani's attack and regenerated his arm. Dauma. I definitely have to release them. He said, while releasing smoke from his fans, that he went for them. Dauma didn't mention any of his techniques. Only he knew that the smoke caused your inner part to freeze. The sisters, trying to get to him, thought about going around the smoke, but suddenly they inhaled some of the smoke which began to cause pain inside them. Dauma. Oh, don't worry, that pain will soon go away he said with a big smile as he tried to cut Kani with his fans. The impact never came because someone new appeared and blocked the attack, who was none other than Giyu without his mask and with an expression of hatred. Giyu. I finally found you, you bastard he said with pure hatred in his words as his Sharingan spun furiously. Giyu's eyes surprised the sisters, but they felt somewhat better, though breathing heavily. Dauma. But if you're the boy who stabbed me that night to be with your sister, it's good to see you again said the smiling moon. Giyu was beyond furious at what he said and went after him. Giyu. Breath of water, third form. Dance of currents he said, swinging his sword to simulate currents, but it wasn't aimed at Dauma himself. Instead, it circled around him to confuse him, which it did, cutting off both his arms. Liego tried to cut off his head, but to his surprise Dauma regenerated his arms and went after him while ice appeared around him, making the environment very cold and preventing Giyu from breathing well, while the sisters were doing even worse. Dauma. You know that no matter what you do, you will die because the air will freeze your lungs to death he said maniacally. Giyu, now in a state of fury, didn't care about revealing his secret in front of the sisters, and jumping into the air, he began to make hand signs. Giyu. Fire style. Fireball jutsu, he thought, taking a deep breath, causing his lungs to no longer be frozen, and releasing a large fireball that Dauma received in awe. The sisters were also surprised by what happened. They never thought that would happen, but the heat from it also thawed their lungs. Kani. How can he do that? Kani said, surprised. Shinobu. I don't know, but this helps us she said, sounding somewhat happy. Then they saw Daum all burned while his regeneration was somewhat slow. Giyu without wasting time went for him, reaching his neck and trying to cut him, but he did not achieve anything, and suddenly some kind of ice flowers appeared and went for Giyu. While using the Sharingan, he dodged with some difficulty while cutting them, then went after him. Dauma was in trouble. He never thought this would happen, so he decided to use his most powerful technique. He walked away, now regenerated, while stomping on the ground, and suddenly a very large ice Buddha appeared and went for Giyu to crush him. Annie Shinobu. Giyu, both sisters shouted in worry as the monstrosity formed and nothing could be seen. The sisters tried to stand up as the smoke disappeared, but what was in front of them surprised them. Giyu was using his Mangekyo Sharingan, spinning furiously as a humanoid skeleton appeared. It was red, but it formed what looked like flesh, then a kind of cape appeared, a shield, and a bottle that was uncorked, and a sword appeared. Giyu. Susanoo, he said while looking at Dauma with his Susanoo. Dauma? What the hell are you? He said, feeling fear for the first time. Giyu. I am an Uchiha, Uchiha Giyu, son of the prodigy of the Uchiha clan, Itachi Uchiha, he said seriously, while destroying the ice Buddha with his Susanoo and sword. Out of fear, Dauma ran away, much to Giyu's anger, who began to bleed from his eyes, and black flames appeared on one of Dauma's legs. Giyu. Amaterasu, he said, already very tired, as he fell unconscious. Dauma, far away, cut off his leg to avoid dying from the black flames. The sisters went to find Giyu, who was badly injured by some cuts from Dauma, and his eyes were bleeding a little from his very sudden use of the Susanoo. Luckily, the blindness effect was no longer present. Annie. Giyu. Shinobu. So this is what it was. Annie Shinobu. What you were hiding, they said as they remembered a book that told about the Uchiha clan. Chapter 13. Note. Remember that this chapter is thanks to, so if possible go and support him since his stories on my page are very good. Well, I'll continue with the chapter. Giyu was being carried to the butterfly estate on Kanny's back as she ran as best she could. She and her sister were almost in perfect condition since they hadn't received any injuries from Dauma, but unfortunately for them, Giyu didn't kill him because of the exhaustion from using his Mangekyo Sharingan, which used up too much chakra. Annie. Shinobu, what do we do? Do we tell the boss about this? Kanny asked her sister about Giyu Sharingan. Shinobu. I don't think we should tell him, he never mentioned it until you told me about him, she said somewhat seriously because it was a very serious matter. Annie. But why would I hide something that would benefit the organization? She said seriously. Shinobu. It would be best if he mentioned it himself. If he didn't, it was for a reason. We shouldn't force him, she said, normal but confused as to why Giyu was hiding his Sharingan, but she would see that later. The two didn't continue talking until they reached headquarters. The fatigue from running was noticeable, so they decided to go to the butterfly estate first to let Giyu rest. When they arrived, they put him on a stretcher and told the others to take care of him so they could then go to the boss's farm to give the report. Once at the farm, they saw him there, so patient and cheerful that his children had returned safe and sound. Boss. My daughters, it's good that you're back, tell me what happened, he said calmly. Annie. Oyakata-sama, my sister and I met Upper Moon too, she said seriously. Boss. So Moon, but I noticed they're okay, did they kill her? He said calmly but still worried. Annie. We didn't fight, it was Giyu Tomioka who fought against the Moon, and it seemed that he would win, but the Moon escaped, she said, hiding the fact of Giyu Sharingan. Master. I see, at least we know there are pillars capable of facing a Moon, you may now withdraw, he said calmly, then both sisters left the master's estate and went to the butterfly estate to heal Giyu's wounds. When they arrived at the estate, they entered calmly and went to attend to Giyu. The girls had taken care of the other wounded, so he was the only one left. They opened a room for the wounded and saw him lying there, wearing one of the estate's clothes, breathing somewhat heavily, with slight red stains on the bandages they had put on him, especially around his eyes, which were bleeding a little. Annie. Giyu, why are you hiding your eyes? She whispered. Shinobu. Do you think it's a good idea to ask him about that? She said, somewhat nervously. Annie. It's probably a sensitive topic to talk about, she said calmly. Both sisters were going to change his bandages, and to do so they first carefully removed the upper part of his clothes and saw with a blush the horn formed on Giyu. They, having a clear understanding of what Giyu was like since on one occasion they asked Mikomo and Sabito what he was like, fell completely in love with him, also because of the fact that he protected them from the Moon. Annie. Ara, I didn't know you were hiding this, Giyu, she said somewhat lustfully. Shinobu. Nisan, don't be selfish, I want to see this too, she said blushing and with a mischievous look. Both tried to restrain themselves from what they had to do, but it was too difficult since Giyu's body was very well formed and it wasn't noticeable because of the suit. Once the two were back in the normal world, they changed his bandages. But when they finished and were about to put his clothes on, they couldn't wait any longer and quickly went for him, kissing his lips, or rather Kani kissed him on the lips, and Shinobu kissed his neck lustfully. Kani kissed his lips desperately, not caring if she woke him up, while Shinobu kissed his neck with small bites, leaving marks that showed he belonged to them. Kani was running out of breath and pulled away from his lips with a blush, but a look of lust was on her face. Shinobu. Ni-san, you've had your moment, now it's my turn, she said as she finished, leaving a mark on his neck, something strong that made Giyu let out a slight moan. The moan made the sisters blush even more, but they changed positions, with Shinobu kissing Giyu's lips and Kani gently biting the other side of his neck so as not to wake him up. They spent a while kissing Giyu, but as time went on they couldn't stand it anymore, and with their tongues, they went down Giyu's body, licking his horn and making Giyu moan, which only made him unconscious. Kani. Ah, I can't take it anymore, I want to see your friend, she said, now overcome with lust. Shinobu. You're not the only one, Ni-san, I want to see it too, she said equally lustfully. They both pulled down Giyu's pants and saw him, his members somewhat erect from the licks the sisters gave him. Without wasting any time, they ran their tongues over it, eliciting moans from Giyu. Both of them already had their private parts wet while they licked his member. Giyu. Og, he let out a moan, making Kani and Shinobu lick faster, until Giyu's member couldn't take it anymore and released his seed, which the sisters took with a blushing face. Kani. Ah, I think we went a little too far, she said, coming to her senses, but her thoughts kept replaying images of her and Giyu doing that. Shinobu. Don't lie, Ni-san, you were already wanting to do that, but this would be wrong with the unconscious, she said, somewhat blushing, and Kani was blushing even more. Both sisters heard footsteps approaching and quickly cleaned themselves up, opened the windows to let the smell go away, and dressed Giyu. Then the girls went inside and saw that nothing was wrong, but Aoi noticed a very small white spot on her cheek. Aoi. Kani-sama, what is that mark on your cheek? The girl asked curiously. Upon hearing this, Kani became nervous and touched the area with her finger, noticing that it was part of Giyu's cheek. She became even more nervous, but Shinobu spoke first. Shinobu. We got a little dirty on our mission, she said, saving her sister who mentally thanked her. Aoi. I understand, see you. So the girls left and Shinobu and Kani decided to go after Giyu with an ear grape. Chapter 14. Giyu had woken up and was somewhat tired. He didn't know why, but he felt that while he was unconscious he was straining to prevent something from coming out, but he didn't pay attention to it since his crow entered and he saw that it had a message. Crow. Caw, meet with the boss, caw, he said, then flew away. Giyu, without waiting, saw that his hunter's outfit and his haori were on a chair. He put them on and quickly went to the master's estate. As he approached, fear gripped him. Remembering how he had revealed his secret in battle made him think he was an idiot, but what could he do? Hatred took over, and he wasn't thinking about what he was doing. He only wanted to kill the one who had killed his sister, his first light who had helped him stand and was gone because of that bastard, according to his words. Then he calmed down, entering with a calm but serious look, noticing that in front of him was the boss who, despite not having the power to fight, held him in great respect. Giyu. To what do I owe my call, Oyakata-sama? He said respectfully. Patron. Hello my son, the reason I called you is because the sisters told me the report of the mission they had, and that you saved them by fighting with the superior Luin too, but I feel that they hid something from me, he said calmly, and Giyu was getting nervous. Giyu. What do you mean, Oyakata-sama? He said, struggling to maintain a calm and serious expression as his nerves got the better of him. Boss. Tell me, Giyu, are you hiding something from us? He said calmly, and Giyu had no escape. He didn't like to lie to the boss, so he would have to explain everything. Giyu. I'm sorry I hid this from you, Oyakata-sama, but it's true, I don't actually have Tomioka family blood, but Uchiha family blood, I have the Sharingan, he said, lowering his head. The boss was very surprised. He knew of the Uchiha clan and their lineage of eyes that helped them a lot in battle. The organization had Uchiha hunters, but their arrogance made them die easily against demons, and he had one serious one who didn't consider himself superior, but treated everyone equally. Patron. That surprises me, Giyu, but tell me what abilities you have with the Sharingan, he said curiously. Giyu. Well, the 3 Tomo stage allows me to predict attacks, but the true power lies in the Manjikyu Sharingan, which has different abilities, like Susanoo, a humanoid that protects me and with which I attack, and Amaterasu, black flames that burn everything and will never go out unless their target is disintegrated or I decide to stop it. But there's a possibility that I'll awaken an ability called Kamui, which allows me to become intangible and teleport anywhere, as well as allowing me to go to a pocket dimension or an illusion called Tsukiyomi, in which I am a god for a second, but inside it feels like days, months, or even years, he said seriously, and the master was surprised. Those abilities would help against Muzan. Patron. Tell me, Giyu, are you sure that with those skills you can face Muzan? He asked calmly, to see if he was arrogant. Giyu. No Oyakata-sama, even if I have advantages with those abilities that doesn't make me invincible. I only have the possibility of being able to face him, he said seriously, and the master was happy to know Giyu's understanding. Boss. Tell me, Giyu, have you thought about having descendants? He said calmly. Giyu. No, master, I want Muzan to die so that we can have offspring. I don't want anyone to die and have to awaken these eyes, as it causes great pain, he said seriously but sadly, remembering how he awakened them, and the master was quite happy with his answer. Patron. Giyu, I understand what you're saying. I'm not saying I don't trust you, but if we don't succeed, it would be good if your children shared your reason for protecting people from demons, and the Sharingan would be beneficial. Giyu. I understand your point, boss, but I'll look into that. I don't want to force anyone to have a child with me just for that reason, but I'll think about it, he said seriously before leaving. But what they didn't know was that the sisters heard everything they said and were surprised by Giyu's words, but they had an idea. That both of them should be his wives, so that he would have offspring and be able to help the organization, as well as win his love if he accepted. While Giyu was on his way to his estate thinking about having offspring, he didn't want to be with anyone, just so that someone would suffer to unlock their eyes, but he stopped thinking about that when he noticed that he had already arrived at his estate and went inside to rest, still with the idea. Chapter 15. Time skip 2 years. During that time, the sisters tried everything to be with Giyu, but nothing worked. They noticed he was too innocent to understand hints, even very direct ones. They were saddened by this because their beloved didn't understand them, but he did care for them as friends and treated them normally and well, which pleased the sisters. They wanted to move forward in their relationship, though they always remembered what they had done to Giyu the day he was unconscious. Although they wanted to repeat it, they couldn't because the estate was too busy with the other wounded. But at that moment, he was on a mission to find a demon in a mountain. Note. I'm too lazy to do everything about Giyu and Tanjiro, so it will be the same as the original story. After Giyu let Nezuko live and sent Tanjiro to the mountain to train, he was in a very complicated debate about whether to tell any of the demon slayers about it. He was going to tell his master, but he was very hesitant about telling his friends Obito, Mikomo, Shinobu, Kani, Tenjin, and Mitsuri. He knew that if they found out, they would judge him for letting a demon live, but he had no other option. He would have to tell his master and see if he would tell the others. After all, sooner or later, it would all come out. Upon arriving at headquarters, he went to the boss's estate to give his mission report, but unfortunately for him, the other pillars were there, passing by Sabito and Mikomo, since Sabito, with a lot of hard work, managed to become a pillar, another water pillar, and Mikomo was his Tsuguko. Upon entering the room, he saw the boss and proceeded to give the report from the moment he went to see her until the moment he let Nezuko live. Giyu. Master, I know what I'm about to say sounds crazy, but let a demon live, he said seriously, looking at him, who was surprised, as were the pillars who were listening to everything through the wall. Boss. Giyu, why did you do it? He said, surprised. Giyu. When I arrived, I saw the boy defending the demon who, as far as I understand, is his sister who was turned into one. I was going to kill her, but something happened that surprised me, he said, leaving the master intrigued, as well as the pillars. Giyu. The demon, instead of attacking or devouring him, protected him. She blocked me and stood between her brother and him, so that he wouldn't do anything to her, he said seriously. Boss. Alright Giyu, I believe you, I know you would never lie to me, but what will you do if she attacks someone? He said doubtfully, and the others listened. Giyu. I will pay with my life for the other pillars if the girl eats a person, besides, this is good if I die, he said, surprising the others and scaring everyone, since Giyu was very loyal to his word, but especially Kani, Shinobu who was an insect pillar, Mikomo and Sabito were scared. Boss. But why do you say it would be good? He said worriedly. Giyu. Remember that my Sharingan is like a curse that only activates through suffering, and if I have a child, I don't want them to suffer, he said sadly, surprising the others about the Sharingan. Boss. Well, that's fine, but how will the others take it? He said worriedly. Giyu. I don't think they'll accept it, so I'll have to stay away from them, he said sadly. Everyone was surprised when he said that, but Kani and Shinobu were going to talk to him. Having finished that, Giyu went to a field to be quiet, but Kani and Shinobu appeared in front of him with a sad expression. Shinobu. Giyu, can you tell us why you're leaving? She said sadly. Giyu. So you hurt him, well that's what will happen, since you surely despise me now for letting a demon live, right? He said seriously. The sisters tried to restrain themselves, but they couldn't anymore. They both threw themselves on top of him, kissing him very possessively, not caring if someone came and saw them in that scene. Giyu was surprised and didn't know what to do at that moment, as Kani kissed him and then separated, and Shinobu was next. After a while they separated from that moment and Giyu was very flushed because of what happened and the sisters were too but with tears. Hanny. Never say we'll hate you, we've always loved you since you saved us from a demon that day. I don't know if you remember, but you were wearing your mask that day and you saved us after my family was killed. Shinobu. Yes, we don't hate you, we just don't want you to leave again, we love you, she said, blushing deeply, while on top of Giyu, as was Kanny. Giyu didn't know what to do. He didn't know much about feelings, but he remembered that whenever he was with them, his heart beat faster. He also remembered the girls he saved on his first mission. Giyu. I honestly don't know what to say. Hanny. Just tell us if you accept us, we don't want to be without you, they said, already crying. Giyu. Okay, I accept your feelings, he said happily, and the sisters hugged him very tightly without caring that. Chapter 16. Giyu was in his room waking up. A month had passed since Giyu and the sisters had started their relationship. During that time, the pillars distanced themselves a little from Giyu for letting Nezuko live, but in the end they decided that if they saw it with their own eyes, they would let her live, so Giyu's friendship was fine. But going back to the present, Giyu was waking up while the sisters were by his side. It should be noted that the pillars were also surprised by this, but Yuzui had a proud face and a victorious expression, as he whispered things like "That's my eccentric shinobi partner," which made everyone sweat. But returning to the present, he saw that the two of them were clinging to him with a smile. Thanks to them, Giyu had been a little more mentally stable after the pain he had gone through and showing a little more of his true self. Someone protective, kind, a little clumsy, but who knows how to love, which the sisters liked. Once the three of them got up, they decided to go about their business. Kanny and Shinobi had to help some injured people, and Giyu stayed to train with Yuzui since he told him to use everything he had, including his Sharingan. Upon arriving, he saw Yuzui smiling, wielding his two swords connected by a chain, while Giyu only had his nincharido, but also a kunai. Yuzui. Well Giyu, how about we give it our all? As Shinobi, let's fight seriously, he said very excitedly. Giyu. Of course, he said smiling as his eyes had the Sharingan, but not the 3-tomo one, but the Manjikyu. Yuzui. That's the spirit, let's go, he said, launching himself at Giyu with a smile. Giyu. Water breathing, first form. Surface slash, he said, delivering a powerful slash, but Yuzui struck a great blow with his swords. Yuzui. Breath of sound, first form. Roar, he said as he raised his swords to lower them and deliver a powerful cut that caused an explosion, turning the two of them into smoke, which they used to separate. Giyu. Alright Yuzui, let's dance, he said smiling as Yuzui smiled back. Yuzui. Of course, he said, turning to attack, throwing some bombs, but Giyu saw this and moved back a little, only noticing the smoke, then Yuzui nearby, extending his sword and holding the tip of one of them with 2 fingers. Giyu. Water breathing, 7th form. Piercing raindrops, he said, delivering a swift stab that deflected the swords and then attacking. Giyu. Water breathing, 8th form. Waterfall ache, he said as he went for Yuzui and made a vertical cut, but Yuzui reacted quickly. Yuzui. Breath of sound, 4th form. A Visi death sentence, he said, separating his swords and twirling them as he released bombs that had been given to Giyu. Giyu. I didn't expect that, he said, sounding somewhat pained. Yuzui. And I'm not finished, breath of sound, 5th form. Symphony of thunderous strings, Yuzui makes a reverse grip with one of his swords while spinning the other, and that connects while he releases some bombs. Giyu. Water breathing, 11th form. Calm, he said to try to defend himself from the attacks, but it was impossible, so he resorted to his only salvation. Using the Susanu's bones, he defended himself and caught Yuzui with his skeletal hand to throw him, which caught Yuzui off guard, but he accepted defeat. But unfortunately for the two of them, they were badly injured and their respective partners looked at them angrily because they had been injured too much and had to be healed. Yuzui was dragged to his estate and Giyu to the butterfly estate. Once at the estate, he was being attended to by the sisters who were somewhat worried about his injuries, but they calmed down upon seeing Giyu's typical smile which cheered them up, but they took advantage of the opportunity. Hanny. Giyu-kun, you've been hurting more lately, she said, looking at him as she approached. Shinobu. And we're worried, that's why we'll give you different treatment, she said, then Kanny kissed Giyu, and he reciprocated. Shinobu was also kissing her, but her neck, eliciting soft moans that were muffled by Kanny's kiss. They stayed like that for a while to change their state, with Shinobi kissing him and Kana kissing his neck. They finished their session, and then Giyu had to rest, and they left to do their things, but Giyu would wake up in a somewhat dark place, some small lights were present. Those lights began to speak, which surprised him since he felt that voice was familiar. You've made good progress, I'm sure Izumi would be proud of you, but you still have a long way to go, said the light calmly while Giyu was confused, but woke up seeing that it was midday. Giyu? Who was it? He said, wondering if he heard the voice, but nothing, no memory. So she spent the whole day thinking about who that voice was and why it knew her mother's name. Chapter 17. After Giyu finished healing, he was sent on a solo mission since the others were on missions and he was the only one left, so he didn't refuse. They told him that women were disappearing and that it was possibly one of the moons. Giyu already had an idea that it was Upper Moon too, since he was the only one who appeared in the places where the women disappeared, so he was going to go all out, using Manjikyu to kill him quickly. Upon arriving at the location, he prepared for the assault against Dauma as he sensed his disgusting presence, but he also sensed another presence that disappeared afterward. He remained vigilant just in case. Then he saw him, his rainbow eyes very identifiable. He was controlling himself so as not to make any mistakes, since he wanted to kill him no matter what, so he took out his sword Ninchurin. Dauma. Oh hello, it's been a while, I think you almost killed me last time, he said seriously. Giyu. You damn trash, I intend to kill you without mercy, he said angrily but controlling himself. Dauma. But don't think I'm going to play around, I know you can give me battles, so I brought some friends, he said, and then Daki, the Upper Moon 6, appeared, her sashes moving and looking at Giyu. Giyu. Another moon. He thought, somewhat surprised and paying closer attention. Suddenly Daki threw his sashes at Giyu, who promptly cut them off to avoid getting hurt. Giyu. Water breathing, second form. Water wheel, he thought to cut the sashes by making a 360-degree rotating cut, but Doima acted quickly. Dauma. Let's see if you can do something with this, Ice Lotus, he said, slashing with his fans, from which ice with lotuses emerged, which went for Giyu, but he acted. Giyu. Water breathing, first form. Surface lash, he thought to deliver a powerful slash against Dauma, who, when they collided, were sent flying, but he could not rest. Daki began to send his sashes to different places that he would have to hit Giyu, and without using any stance he had to just block since it would cause him harm, which he managed to do while somewhat exhausted, but Dauma was behind him to cut him, but he blocked it with difficulty, but took advantage of his opportunity. Giyu. Amaterasu, he said as a drop of blood came out of him and the flames managed to ignite his arm, which worried Dauma and he moved away, but the sashes returned, altogether like a blade that was going to hit him, but he quickly thought. Giyu. Water breathing, sixth form. Winding whirlpool, he thought to twist his entire body and turn to block the attack by cutting it, and he went for Daki at great speed, while making hand seals. Daki. What are you doing, it's for luck, she said mockingly while she was ready to defend herself, but what happened scared her. Giyu. Fire style, fireball jutsu, he said, throwing a large fireball, and Daki could only see it as he covered himself with his hands to block it. When the sashes collided, they caught fire, which managed to hit Daki. She started screaming, but the fire was extinguished by Dauma, who cut his arm to prevent it from spreading. Using his frozen smoke, he managed to put out Daki's fire. Dauma. Hey, it's not good for you to do that, you know. He said, quickly going to attack Scattered Lotus, he said, creating sharp currents of ice petals with both of them, which could move freely and went towards Giyu. He tried to dodge them until he managed to get away. Giyu. Water breathing, 11th form. Calm, he said to stay still and begin blocking Dauma's attacks by cutting the petals, managing to be fine, but something new happened. Suddenly, some blood-covered leaves came at him, which alerted him and he began to cut them, and he saw that they were like controlled. In the end, he managed to cut them, but it was difficult for him because Dauma tried to cut him. He managed to push Dauma away, and what he saw horrified him. There were 3 moons, one was Daki, along with another demon who had black hair with green and bones, who had scythes in his hand and had the number 6 in his eyes, and they were next to Dauma. Giyu was in trouble. It was 3 moons against him, so he would have to be careful, since he knew he would have a very difficult time. He saw how the new moon, named Gyutaro, was already in front of him and was going to cut him, but through his Sharingan, he noticed certain essences of potent poison and was able to barely avoid it. Daitato. Oh yes, you are good, but we'll see what you do. Flying blood sickles, he said as blood began to surround his scythes and make cuts from which leaves of blood emerged that Giyu quickly began to cut, but Daki's sashes were for him to protect his brother, making it difficult for Giyu to do much since it complicated things too much, but the next thing scared him since Dauma was far away behind him. Dauma. Let's make this more fun, Lotus of Life, he said, creating several lotuses that extended their stems and went around him in different directions, which made things more complicated for Giyu, so he would have to use all of himself. Giyu. 11th form. Calm, he thought, alert, as all the attacks came at the same time, and he blocked them as best he could. Some almost hit him, and some grazed parts of him, leaving scratches. Giyu. Damn it, I can't go on like this, if this continues I will die, and I won't be able to avenge Tsutako, Giyu thought angrily, but one of the blood stems and leaves managed to pierce Giyu's defense, and together they hit him in the chest. It was going to be the end for him, but he was in a dark place while the attacks were about to pierce one of his lungs. Suddenly that light appeared again. "What's wrong with you? Why aren't you giving it your all?" he said angrily. "Giyu? Who are you?" he said, confused. "I am your father Itachi Uchiha, believe me I am watching you and you are not using your full potential," he said angrily, revealing his figure. "Giyu? What do you want me to do? I'm almost exhausted and I won't be able to defend myself," he said desperately. "Itachi. Never say that, break your limits, show that you don't give up, don't show that you are weak, show that you can surpass yourself even when on the verge of death, fight for what you want and who you want to protect, show the power of an Uchiha," he said before disappearing. Giyu suddenly opened his eyes wide and revealed his Manjukam Sharingan. The attacks passed right through him, but no blood was splattered, nor did they leave any wounds. Instead, they passed as if he were a ghost. The other attacks also hit him, but as before, it was like hitting a ghost. "Giyu. I don't plan to die, you bastards," he shouted angrily as he went after them, a gleam coming from his eyes. Chapter 18. Giyu first went after Daki, who was surprised and didn't notice him, so he was behind her and cut off her head, but she didn't disappear because he saw that she and her brother were the same moon, so he thought he would have to cut off both of their heads. Then he blocked Gyuro's attack, who was angry, so he quickly started breathing. "Giyu. Water breathing, 8th form. Waterfall Lake," he thought to make a simple but very strong cut that managed to cut something off his neck. Gyutaro angrily went to cut him, but again he passed through without any damage, which surprised him, but he distanced himself when he saw that if he did it like that he could not attack either, and joined Dauma to attack. "Gyutaro. Dauma, use your best attack," he said somewhat scared. I swear he saw a kind of ghost with red eyes in Giyu. "Dauma. Say no more, Frost Lily Bidhisatiba," he said, touching the ground and causing a huge ice Buddha to appear that was going to crush Giyu, but he pierced it. "Gyutaro. What the hell, you're not doing anything to him," he said, and noticed his sister was with him. "Daki. What do we do? I'm not going to die," she said, frightened. "Giyu. I don't intend to die, I intend to take you to hell with me, but that ice Buddha will be a problem," he said, surprising the demons who watched in fear as something red formed. "Giyu. Susanoo," he said, causing the same humanoid figure to appear, just like the one that appeared against Dauma in the first fight. The figure then uncorked his bottle and went after the Buddha, managing to split him in half, while also cutting in half the 3 moons that regenerated. Gyutaro and Daki went straight for Giyu, but their attacks were stopped by the Susanu's shield, which surprised the demons since they weren't doing anything to him. Gyutaro vanished into the smoke and managed to stand in front of the Susanoo, then said. "Gyutaro." Rotating circular slashes. "Flying blood sides," he said, releasing a large number of blood blades that hit the Susanoo, which was beginning to crack slightly. This alerted Giyu, who tried to seal Gyutaro with his enormous sword, but Gyutaro dodged it. "Giyu. I'm running out of energy," he said wearily, but he thought of something that might give him a slight advantage. Knowing that this would cost him dearly, he began to close his eyes and then said. "Giyu. Amaterasu," he said, causing the Susanoo to be enveloped in black flames, making it very dangerous to touch. "Dauma. Damned," he said, going for it again with another created Buddha, but at the slightest contact it was burned. "Daki. This can't be," she said, then sent her girdles, but when they touched him they burned and expanded so much that she had to cut the girdles so that they wouldn't reach him. "Gyutaro. Is it impossible to defeat him or what?" he said while releasing many blood leaves to go after him, but they were dissipated. Then Giyu with too much effort moved the sword to hit them, but before he could hit them, Giyu's wound appeared in which he began to feel great pain, and he spat blood, and his eye bled. Suddenly the flames died down and the Susanoo began to disappear, leaving only a skeleton as a defense, which the others took advantage of to attack. Dauma, with great effort, managed to form a somewhat smaller ice Buddha, as the previous one was very tiring for him, and with it he went to attack, but Gyutaro caught him with his Susanoo hands and tried to withstand it, but Gyutaro's blood blades hit him, while Daki's sashes tried to separate the skeleton's hands so that Dauma could attack. Dauma let the Buddha attack, while several lotuses with sharp petals went after him, which at first did not achieve anything, but some pierced him and cracked his skin. "Giyu. No, I don't intend to die, I intend to fight until I kill them," he thought, and with great difficulty, he reformed his Susanoo into its previous state, his shield blocking the demon's attacks and his sword destroying the Buddha. "Dauma. Because he doesn't die," he said angrily. The 2 brothers were getting scared and stopped attacking to retreat, but the Susanoo disappeared, leaving him standing there with a lot of blood coming out, his eyes closed, looking tired at the sky. "Dauma. Now. Daki. You will die, you bastard," he said as they all went after him, ready to kill him. The attacks pierced him as he managed to activate Kamui at the last moment, but not enough to stop him from ending up with wounds on his back. "Giyu. This is my last attack, 3rd form. Dance of the currents, he said, swinging his sword and dancing like the currents, but without managing to cut off their heads, only Daki's and a little bit of Gyudaro's, and he fell unconscious. Gyudaro? You will die, you bastard, he said, approaching, but some swords cut his arms, it being Uzui Tenjin who looked worriedly at his friend. Also present were Kani, Shinobu, and Jayame, who had finished their missions and went to help Giyu, and saw him with his flaming Sunano fighting against them. Kani? Damn you all, die. She said angrily upon seeing her beloved in such a bad state. She and Shinobu went after Dauma, while Jayame and Uzui were attacking Daki and Gyudaro who couldn't do much, plus Daki was headless, and lastly Jayame was holding Gyudaro with his chains. The sisters fought as best they could with Dauma until the sun came out. Dauma, frightened, ran away, while having the hateful gaze of both sisters, but Daki and Gyudaro were not so lucky, since Giyu with too much effort stabbed his ninchurito into Gyudaro, who had freed himself from Jayame, so that he could not escape. The two brothers, still far from the sun, tried to free themselves, but nothing worked. Daki's head was out and Giyu, again with too much effort, pulled out his sword to finally cut off his head. Since Gyudaro disappeared because he was cut and faster because of the sun, just like Daki who couldn't believe it, both of them died. The four hunters went to help Giyu, who had fallen, already very exhausted and bleeding profusely, and the sisters were crying as they hurriedly took him to the butterfly estate. Chapter 19. The sisters, along with Jayame and Uzui, were running very fast to help Giyu, as he had a wound on his back and chest that, if not for Kamui, would have punctured his lung. They won against one of the moons, but at the price of Giyu being on the verge of death. The worst part is that he couldn't kill Dauma. The five of them, having already arrived at headquarters, decided to quickly put Giyu in a bed so he could rest at the butterfly estate. After they had him settled, the sisters cleaned the blood off him and then saw that he was running out of air, so Kani, without wasting any time, began to give him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation so he could breathe. Then they treated his wounds to prevent them from becoming infected and then bandaged them. They were almost finished and were somewhat exhausted since the wounds were too many, but they could rest a little while Giyu slept. Tomorrow would be another day, but Uzui entered the room worried about Giyu. Uzui? How are you? He said worriedly, since Giyu was like a brother to him. Kani? Yes, Uzui-san, he's fine, he's just unconscious due to lack of energy, she said calmly, while inside she was trying to calm down. Uzui? That's good, but I'm surprised he can hold his own against 3 moons, he said, remembering how Giyu fought against the moons. Kani? Well, yes, but apparently that cost him a lot, she said, thinking that it would be risky. After a while the 3 left while Jayame gave the report to the boss, but they were happy, they had managed to defeat one of the moons, since it had been a long time since a hunter managed to kill an upper moon. Everyone was fine as they visited Giyu to check on his condition, as he was not waking up while he was in a dark place. Giyu was walking through a dark place, he couldn't see anything, there was only darkness, until 2 lights appeared, they were the same ones who were running from the forest to save him. Giyu? Who are you? He said, confused, looking at the 2 people. Suddenly, the woman named Izumi and Itachi hugged him tightly while tears streamed from their eyes, and Giyu was confused. Izumi? Forgive us for leaving you alone, she said as she hugged her son tighter. Giyu? They still haven't answered me, he said, sounding a bit calmer. Izumi? I am your mother, and he is your father, my name is Izumi Uchiha, she said as she separated and looked at her son with a tender look that surprised Giyu. Giyu? But they're dead, he said as tears streamed from his blue eyes. Itachi? When you exchanged your eyes for mine, you made it possible for our chakras to communicate with you and see you as you are, he said, smiling as he looked at his calm son. Izumi? Believe me, I'm proud of how you've grown. You're very strong, and you protected everyone you could, and you're not a pervert, she said normally, but then she remembered something. Izumi? By the way, how come you have 2 girlfriends? She said, looking at him seriously, and Giyu was scared, but Itachi spoke. Itachi? Calm down, Izumi, they love him and he loves them too, besides, you're going to have grandchildren, he said in an attempt to calm his wife, which he managed to do. Giyu? Ka-san is scary, he whispered, since he had never felt that fear before. Izumi? Well, I'm glad you're happy, but we don't have any time left, she said sadly. Giyu? But I barely knew them, he said sadly, tears welling up in his eyes. Itachi? We know it was very little, but we will always be there for you, we have never abandoned you, he said, tapping Giyu's forehead with his 2 fingers. Izumi? We will always be with you, no matter what, we are proud of you, she said as she began to disappear along with Itachi, who was smiling at her. While outside it was already night, the only ones with Giyu were Kani and Shinobu who looked at him worriedly as he did not wake up, but suddenly he woke up, which frightened the sisters for a moment, which was changed to joy, and they hugged him tightly, while he had a few tears coming out. Kani? Idiot, you had us worried sick, she said crying. Shinobu? Why do you always act like this? she said, also crying. Giyu. I'm sorry for worrying you, he said, returning the hug with pain, and they were calmer. They stayed like that for a while until they separated and got into the same bed as Giyu, hugging him and hiding their faces to sleep. He couldn't have been happier because he wasn't alone. He had friends and his beloved ones. Meanwhile, from the sky, 5 people watched Giyu with smiles on their faces, these being the Tomiokas and the 2 Uchihas who were proud of their son and adopted son, especially Tsutako who saw her little brother being happy. The next day everyone had the day off and didn't want to train or do anything, since many were tired, especially Giyu who had to fully recover from his fight, while the Kocho sisters were very comfortable with Giyu and didn't want to separate. Chapter 20. Giyu was waking up. A week had passed in which he managed to fully recover, but during that time the sisters took advantage of the opportunity to pamper him, which embarrassed Giyu a little, but he didn't care. It was a day off for him and the Kocho sisters. They were at the water estate and it was midday. If you're wondering why they slept until that time, it's because they were very tired from the missions and couldn't do much more, so they slept until that time, but they had eaten breakfast. Giyu looked around and saw the sisters clinging to him, asleep. He smiled at how cute they looked, and with his hands he stroked their heads and saw how surprisingly they purred a little, which brought an even bigger smile to his face. Giyu. They look like cats, and they look very cute, he whispered, still stroking their heads. After a while he was about to fall asleep, but the sisters woke up and were somewhat confused about what time it was, but they remembered what happened and looked up and saw Giyu stroking their heads, causing the 2 of them to blush slightly and hide in him, so that he wouldn't see them. They were going to tell him to stop, but it felt so good and they didn't want him to stop, so she clung to him even more. But Kani couldn't help herself and lifted her head to look at him, then leaned in and kissed him on the lips, which he gladly accepted, making Kani happy. But Shinobu was a little jealous of what was happening, and when Kani pulled away, she took advantage of the moment and kissed him on the lips. Lemon skipped. They were both asleep, they didn't care to eat since they were tired, tomorrow would be another day. Chapter 21. A month had passed since the 3 of them had consummated the act, and they had to say that all 3 of them liked it, but now they had to go on a mission, and it was a train mission in which Kaijiro Rengoku had to go, along with Tanjiro, Zenitsu and Inosuke, and Nezuko would accompany them, but Giyu had a bad feeling about that mission, and asked the master to give him permission to go on the mission, which was given to Giyu who thanked him. After that, Giyu went to the train where the demon was said to be, and he went inside to see Rengoku eating. The others hadn't arrived yet, so he was waiting, trying to stay calm, but it was impossible. Why, you ask? Well, because of this. Kaijiro. You might eat, you might keep eating and finish, you might, he said very energetically, and Giyu swore that if it weren't for the meditation training, he would punch Kaijiro to make him shut up, because although he didn't have a bad relationship with him, he didn't like the fact that he was very noisy and energetic, so to at least calm things down he spoke. Giyu. Rengoku-san, don't you think you could be a little quieter, without offending anyone? Said Giyu somewhat apologetically. Kaijiro. Oh sure, and don't worry, it doesn't offend, he said smiling while eating and holding back a little from shouting Yumai, but just then the other 3 boys arrived. Giyu noticed the other 2 blonde-haired boar-headed boys who were arguing. He was already annoyed by the fact that they were noisy, but let's be honest, he liked the calm, and being among so much noise was too uncomfortable for him. Tanjiro. Hello Rengoku-san and Tomioka-san, he said, greeting respectfully. Rengoku. Yumai, he shouted, unable to contain himself. Giyu. Hello Tanjiro, he said normally, looking at him and noticing that he found it strange that Rengoku was shouting. Giyu. I notice you find what Rengoku-san did strange, don't you? He asked normally, seeing how nervous he was. Tanjiro. Huh. No, it's just that, he said nervously. Giyu. Relax, that's just how he is, he loves to eat, besides, as far as I know, it doesn't bother him, he said normally with a warm smile, calming Tanjiro. Kaijiro. Sorry if that bothers me, but like Tomioka said, that's just how I am, he said, smiling brightly. After that, the 3 companions sat down. It was difficult to get the boar-headed boy to sit down because he was very proud, saying that he was the king of the mountain. Giyu was sure he would have preferred the illusion ability to put Inosuke to sleep, but what could be done? After waiting a while, Tanjiro asked Rengoku about the dance of the fire god. Rengoku told him he knew nothing about it and asked him to become his apprentice, which Tanjiro happily accepted, as did the others. Well, Giyu didn't care much about that, since he had noticed once that Tanjiro wasn't very skilled at water breathing, so he would have to use a different breathing style. He was attentive with his Sharingan, hidden by the mask he wore, since he didn't want Tanjiro to see it. He noticed something strange. The person checking the passengers' tickets had a strange demonic energy emanating from the ticket marking device, and he took precautions. When it was his turn to hand over his ticket, he activated the Manjukum Sharingan and gave it to her. He saw it. It was filled with energy of a blood-like texture. He didn't know what it was, but he would have to take the risk, so he grabbed it. Nothing happened at first, and he saw that everything was normal, except for one thing. Now he felt the presence of demons that hadn't been there before, and they weren't from the moons, because they were easy to notice due to their great power. So he thought it was an illusion, and by hurting himself, he managed to break free from that illusion, and saw the others asleep. This alarmed him a little, but he saw some children approaching with some kind of needles. He pretended to be asleep, and noticed the lower moon one who was with the children, and heard her say that she wanted them to enter dreams to break some kind of core. He didn't understand what she meant, but he saw the children entering what appeared to be the dreams of their companions, and this alerted him. When the moon went to the ceiling, he took advantage and rudely tied the children to their seats with some ropes, waking them up so they wouldn't cause trouble. Then he tried to wake Tanjiro, Kaijuro, Zenitsu and Inosuke, but nothing worked. However, Nezuko came out of her box and set the drugs on fire. According to Giyu, it seemed like she was waking them from their sleep, which pleased him somewhat, but then he saw Nezuko looking serious. Giyu. If your name is Nezuko, he said, looking at her, and she nodded. Nezuko. Yes, said Nezuko. Giyu. Alright, well I face the moon, you defend those you can until they manage to awaken, he said seriously while stroking Nezuko's head, and she nodded. After that, Giyu jumps out of the train, managing to get onto the roof, seeing that the lower moon one was looking at him smiling and pointing at him with its hand that had a mouth. Enmu. Well, so you escaped sleep, said the smiling moon. Giyu. You damn demon, I won't let you play with people's dreams, he said seriously as he took off his mask and closed his eyes. Enmu. You think you can fight with your eyes closed? You're really stupid, he said mockingly while pointing at him with his hand. Giyu. I don't intend to fight without looking, I intend to prevent you from putting me in those dreams, he said seriously, opening his eyes and showing his 3-tomo Sharingan, surprising Enmu. Enmu. You have those eyes, he said angrily, since there was little chance that he would get him into an illusion. Giyu. Yes, with this I'll prevent you from putting me in those dreams, he said angrily as he charged at Enmu first form. Surface cut, he said to deliver a simple but powerful cut, but Enmu somehow avoided the attack by jumping and trying to put him to sleep. Enmu. Sleep forever, she said as she noticed that he remained still for a second, but then he moved again. Giyu. Don't think I'll fall for it, he said seriously as he went after him, but something happened. The train cars began to turn into meat, which worried him. Enmu. Oh, don't you know I merged with the train? He said smiling, while looking at him. What will you do, will you kill me and let the rest die, or will you save the others and let me live? He said mockingly. Giyu. What do I do now? He said, sweating as he thought quickly. A Tanjiro appeared with his ninchurito in hand and angrily looked at Enmu, and Giyu smiled. Giyu. Tanjiro, I trust you to fight against the moon, be careful, don't let it put you to sleep with its technique, I'll take care of the wagons, he said seriously. Tanjiro. Understood, Tomioka-san, he said, smiling. After that, Giyu went to the train cars to see how Nezuko was trying to defend the others, and he smiled, so he started cutting to help her. Chapter 22. Giyu was cutting what looked like fleshy tentacles while Tanjiro was upstairs fighting Enmu, but he saw through a window how one of the tentacles had Enmu's head. This angered him because he had more to do, and it wasn't easy. It was an entire train he had to help. But luckily for him, Zenitsu appeared and helped, as did Inosuke, and to his relief, Kaijuro as well. Without wasting any time, he went to help Tanjiro against the demon, while the others helped him with the train. He went to the ceiling and saw a large pillar of flesh, which had several eyes that affected Tanjiro, but what scared him was seeing that he had his sword at his neck about to cut himself, so he quickly grabbed his hand and put him on the ground, making him wake up. Giyu. Tanjiro, concentrate, listen, I'll clear the way for you while you go for his neck, okay? Giyu said seriously, looking at Tanjiro who nodded. Then the two took a great leap to fall from above. Giyu had his Sharingan spinning, while Tanjiro did his best not to look at the eyes, and Giyu helped him a lot by cutting all the eyes, and saw that a layer of flesh covered part of it. He assumed it was to protect himself, so he acted quickly to leave the rest to Tanjiro. Giyu. Water breathing, 8th form. Waterfall Lake, he said, delivering a powerful slash that cut through the flesh of the place and left Tanjiro. Tanjiro. Father, guide my sword, he said, causing his breath to turn into fire, much to the surprise of Giyu, who watched smiling as he cut off nearby eyes to prevent any problems. After Tanjiro made his cut, the train began to move very violently, which alerted Giyu. They had already destroyed the moon, so he quickly pulled Tanjiro out of the area and helped his companions as best he could. The other people had to help them in some way, so they tried to get those they could to safety, but then the train crashed, leaving a lot of smoke. Then they saw that it was still night and continued to see Giyu somewhat exhausted, while Kaijiro was in perfect condition looking at Tanjiro, who was breathing very heavily due to the sudden change in breathing, but then a great demon presence became present. Then they turned around and saw him, the Upper Moon 3 in front of them looking at them, who suddenly made a move to go after Tanjiro to kill him, but Kaijiro cut off his arm to protect him. Bakaza. What a fine sword, let's see if it cuts as well, said the moon, smiling as she looked at the two pillars. Giyu. Upper Moon 3, he said seriously, getting into a fighting stance next to Kaijiro. Bakaza. Oh, if it isn't the pillars, let me introduce myself, I'm Akaza, let me tell you that your battle instinct is very good, what are your names? He said smiling. Kaijiro. I am Kaijiro Rengoku, Flame Pillar, he said seriously, looking at the moon. Giyu. Giyu Tomioka, Pillar of Water, he said seriously, looking at him. Bakaza. Oh, I see, you're the one who killed Upper Moon 6 along with other pillars and almost killed Upper Moon 2, Akaza said smiling, looking at Giyu, why don't you become demons? It wouldn't cost you anything for Upper Moon 6 and that way we can fight forever, Akaza said smiling. Giyu Kaijiro. We would never be as disgusting as a demon, they said, wasting no time before going after him. Akaza. Bad decision, he said as he stepped on the ground and a snowflake-like shape with numbers appeared beneath him and he ran towards them both. First he tried to hit Kaijiro, but his arm was cut by Giyu, who looked at him seriously, but he recovered instantly, but Kaijiro quickly cut him again, but near the neck, impressing Akaza. Giyu. Now, he said, causing his eyes to bleed, and then said Amaterasu, causing Akaza's chest to burst into black flames, which frightened him a little. He tore off that part and threw it far away. Giyu. Damn it. He said angrily as Kaijiro went for Akaza from the air to deliver a slash with his flame breath. Kaijiro. Flame breathing, first form. Sea of fire, he said as he went to try and cut him, but Akaza easily dodged it, but he didn't expect the next thing. Giyu. Third form. Dance of the currents, he said, swinging his sword and spinning around, cutting Akaza, who was surprised by Giyu's attacks, which were very precise. It was like fighting against ultimate attacks. Akaza. Damn it, he said, leaping upside down and throwing punches that sent a shockwave through him, which Kaijiro and Giyu barely managed to block with their swords, but they were breathing heavily. Giyu. What are breathing, sixth form. Winding whirlpool, he said, twisting his body to spin like a whirlpool, managing to avoid some. Kaijiro. Flame breathing, fourth form. Blazing flame wave, he said, delivering a circular cut that blocked Akaza's attacks. Akaza was impressed and went to attack the pillars, but Giyu attacked first. Giyu. Water breathing, eighth form. Waterfall Lake Litso said to make a cut, but Akaza managed to spot him, but that was just a distraction, now, he said smiling. Kaijiro. Breath of flames, fifth form. Fire Tiger said, making cuts that took the shape of a tiger, which was for Akaza, who was being held by Giyu. Akaza. You fool, you will die, he said mockingly. Giyu. Are you sure? He said, showing his Manjikam Sharingan and passing it through like a ghost, the attack hitting Akaza. The pillars were injured, as they had been hit several times by Akaza and were bleeding. Akaza. They must definitely be demons, to fight for eternity, he said smiling. Kaijiro. I will never fulfill my duty as a pillar, breath of flames, ninth form. Purgatory, he said as he charged at Akaza wrapped in a fire dragon. Akaza, impressed by the attack, counterattacked and, just like in the original story, something happened. Just as Akaza was about to pierce Kaijiro, he felt as if he had hit something hard for him, which impressed him. The smoke came out and Giyu was seen in his Susanoo with a shield, with Kaijiro behind him also inside the Susanoo. Giyu. This is where you will die, Upper Moon 3 said Surio as he returned to his skeletal form and held Akaza with his hands, preventing him from leaving. The sun was rising. Kaijiro, like the rest, was shocked by Giyu's technique that left Akaza no escape, but in a desperate act, he tore off his entire body, leaving only his chest and head, managing to regenerate quickly and go through the forest, disappearing. Giyu was frustrated, he felt useless again, he couldn't fight Dauma, and even less the third one, he felt bad, but Kaijiro calmed him down by putting a hand on his shoulder. Chapter 23. Giyu, Kaijiro, and the other three hunters were on their way to headquarters to give their report on the encounter with Lower Moon 1 and the confrontation with Upper Moon 3. Giyu was still frustrated that he hadn't killed Akaza, but he had to put those thoughts aside for the moment since they had arrived at the butterfly estate. Although they had to give their report, their injuries came first, as they were about to faint from exhaustion, especially Giyu, who was still having difficulty controlling his Susanoo, and it was draining too much chakra. When they arrived at the estate, they were welcomed, but Kani and Shinobu, seeing Giyu's injuries, took him to a room to heal him, while Tanjiro and his group, along with Kaijiro, were taken to other stretchers to be treated, with the girls attending to them. Giyu was resting in a bed while being treated by the sisters who were worried about what had happened and asked themselves 1,000 questions, but above all about how he caused those injuries. "Annie. Giyu-kun, how did you get these injuries?" she said worriedly. "Giyu. On the train mission, I encountered Lower Moon 1 and Upper Moon 3 along with the other hunters. I couldn't do much against Upper Moon 3. I barely managed to save Ringoku-san from being killed," he said somewhat sadly. "Shinobu. Don't worry, everything will be alright, it's over now, there will be more opportunities to kill the moons," she said with a smile. "Annie. That's true, don't feel frustrated, besides, you managed to face the Upper Moon 6 and 2, and you were probably too tired to do something," she said smiling to calm him down. Upon hearing what the two sisters said, Giyu calmed down and smiled, relieved to have his mates with him. This was the peace he so longed for, so he allowed himself to be cared for. Meanwhile, Kaijiro was at the master's estate giving his report on everything that had happened. The master was surprised by what had transpired and thanked Giyu for saving Kaijiro. Back at the estate, Giyu was sleeping while the sisters attended to other hunters, but in his dream he began to see his parents again. He didn't understand what was happening. He thought that everything was over regarding his parents, but he saw a smile on their faces, something that confused him. "Izumi. Hello again Giyu-chan," she said smiling as she hugged Giyu. "Itachi. Hello Giyu," he said with a small smile. "Giyu? What happened? How are you here?" he said, somewhat confused. "Itachi. You see, we saw your desperation at not being able to do anything against those demons, and we want to give you something," he said seriously, looking at his son. "Giyu? What happened?" he said seriously. "Izumi. Separating from the hug, you see, your eyes, even though you changed them, are weakening from not having used them for a long time in the past, or rather, you didn't use the mangekyou much," she said seriously, while Giyu was surprised. "Giyu? So they weaken, I think this is reasonable, since I don't use them much," he said seriously. "Itachi. That's why I'll give you something that will cause you a lot of pain in your eyes," he said seriously, looking at him with his own mangekyou. "Giyu? What is it?" he said seriously. Suddenly, Itachi threw a very dangerous illusion at him that could cause the person's mental breakdown. It hurt him, but he had to do it, and he trusted his son. In the illusion, Giyu was in a place with a red sky. He didn't understand what was happening, but what he saw was hurting him. His beloved was in front of him being devoured by Dauma. This hurt him, but his own voice, or rather his dark side, spoke to him. "Dark Giyu. You see what your own weakness caused, you are nobody without those eyes, and without them you will never be able to defend your loved ones," he said, smiling broadly. Then he moved to the scene of Sabito and Makomo's fight against that demon. He saw how he was only able to save them because of his eyes. It wasn't his own strength, it was luck that saved them. And finally, the first fight against Dauma. He only managed to survive him because of his eyes, and he no longer knew how to feel. "Dark Giyu. You see, your eyes achieved everything, you never achieved anything, and if you manage to kill that moon, your eyes will be responsible," he said, laughing even more. Giyu wanted to cry, he didn't know how to feel, but he activated his own Sharingan and thought things through, and then he spoke. "Giyu. I never achieved anything without my eyes, moreover, I activate my own eyes, I perform the actions, I activate their techniques, and I am the one who fights, not my eyes," he said seriously while looking at the other Giyu with his mangekyou, which now shone brighter than before. Suddenly everything was different, Giyu was in half of the area where he was and it was light blue, while the other half was red, and the dark Giyu were calm. And everything merged, his evil half and good half being in good condition in the same horn, and suddenly all his abilities were activated, and surprisingly, he wasn't very tired, and the illusion ended, and he looked at his parents. "Giyu? What happened?" he said, confused. "Itachi. Your spiritual chakra was in bad shape and needed fixing. Also, the Sharingan was amplifying your negative side, so you needed to be in complete peace to achieve the perfect state of the Sharingan," he said, smiling. Then they disappeared and Giyu woke up seeing that it was night and noticed the sisters by his side sleeping with him smiling, that made him happy, and he went back to sleep. Chapter 24. Giyu was waking up while the sisters beside him were still asleep. He was smiling, but just then Sabito and Makomo appeared, having come to visit him, and seeing him in that situation, they took advantage of it. "Makomo. Sorry to interrupt," she said, slowly closing the door. "Sabito. Give us nephews soon, Giyunai," he said, smiling mischievously. Giyu was as red as a tomato, but unfortunately for him, the sisters, who were half awake, heard that and were even redder, since it never crossed their minds that Giyu would do that to them while holding babies in his arms, and Giyu was helping them. Undoubtedly a fantasy that she would want to fulfill. The day had passed normally until nightfall. Note: I know I only said that he woke up, but whatever, script power. Everyone at the butterfly estate was asleep, or at least the residents who were there, since Shinobu and Kani weren't at the butterfly estate because they were at Giyu's estate talking to him. Giyu? So, what did you want to talk about? He said, taking a sip of tea that Kani had prepared for him. Shinobu? Well, we've noticed that lately Sabito and Mikomo have been asking you for a nephew or niece, she said with a mischievous tone. Kani? And we want to grant you that favor, what do you say? She said, smiling at him. Giyu? You know this will cause you to miss missions because of your pregnancy. I'm not saying I don't want a family, but I don't want it to seem like I'm forcing you, he said worriedly. Kani? We knew you'd say that, that's why she put a potent aphrodisco in your tea, she said, smiling mischievously. Giyu began to feel a lot of heat in his body and was entering a state of altered hormones. Kani and Shinobu noticed it and without wasting time they took him to the room by pulling and pushing him onto the bed. Kani? We're going to have a family, Giyu-kun, she said, smiling mischievously. Shinobu? And for that you'll have to go hard, she said, starting to take off her clothes just like Kani. Then the two of them were already without their clothes watching Giyu, who stood up a little. The first to go for him was Kani, who kissed him passionately as she put her tongue in. She didn't want to play games, she already wanted Giyu's member inside, so she wanted to speed up the pace, while Shinobu kissed Giyu's neck somewhat calmly while leaving some small marks. After a while, Giyu was already consumed by lust, grabbing the backsides of both sisters, who let out a moan in unison. Smiling, they kissed him again as he touched their rear ends, but Kani pulled away so Shinobu could begin kissing Giyu with her tongue, which he returned. Kani then kissed the left side of Giyu's neck, leaving marks. She, now somewhat desperate, threw Giyu's haori away and ripped off his uniform with Shinobu's help, gazing at Giyu's toned body as he licked his lips. Kani? Giyu, you really did leave us a very nice gift, she said, licking her lips. Shinobu? And believe us, we're going to enjoy it, she said, getting up and sitting on Giyu's face, crouching down and making Giyu's face sink a little deeper. Shinobu? Come on, Giyu-kun, please me, she said, trying to excite Giyu even more. Lemon skipped. And so the two ended up sleeping, who knows, perhaps because of the large amount of seed that Giyu released, the two butterflies had offspring. Chapter 25. 2 weeks had passed since Giyu, Kani, and Shinobu had their encounter. They had to say that all three of them enjoyed it immensely. Kani and Shinobu loved how Giyu released his seed. In their words, it tasted incredibly good. Giyu enjoyed licking both girls' private parts. Their juices were so sweet that they intoxicated him somewhat. But currently Giyu is with his two girlfriends, looking at the courtyard of the water estate. Kani and Shinobu were lying on Giyu's lap since it was too comfortable and he was stroking their heads. They loved the touch. Giyu was sometimes cold, but normally with them he was very kind. But something sudden happened. The sisters got up and ran to the bathroom, closing the door very quickly, and Giyu began to hear noises as if they were spitting something out of their mouths. He didn't understand, he was worried about them when he went in and saw them vomiting a lot. He was behind them patting their backs to calm them down a little, and that's what happened, they calmed down as best they could. Giyu? Are you alright? Did something happen to you? He said, scared and worried about them. Kani? Why yes, Giyu-kun, she said, panting for air, she had vomited a lot. Shinobu? We just don't know what happened, she said, panting for air. It was strange for both of them. They didn't know what was going on. Both girls were confused, though recovered from what had happened, wondering what the possibilities were for them to have those vomiting attacks. They didn't understand it until they remembered the night they had it. At first, they denied it, thinking they had eaten something bad or something else, but as a precaution, they decided to go to the butterfly estate to get tested. But they wanted to confirm something and see if Giyu would agree. Kani? Giyu-kun, I have some idea what happened, she said, something insecure. She was afraid Giyu would leave her for being pregnant. Shinobu? But tell us, are you going to abandon us because of this news? She said, looking at him with tears in her eyes. Giyu? Never, he said seriously, seeing that they had a surprised expression. Giyu? I would never leave you, you are some of the most important people to me. If something happened to you, I would never forgive myself for that. No matter what happens, I will always be there for you, he said, smiling warmly at both sisters who were shedding tears because of that and threw themselves on top of him, giving him kisses all over his face. Kani? You're the best thing that's ever happened to us, she said, hugging him as did Shinobu. Giyu? But what was it you had to tell me? He said, now calm. Shinobu? You see, since the last time we did that, we said we'd give Sabito and Mikomo nephew, she said smiling, and Giyu's eyes widened. Kani? And it seems it came true, there's a possibility we're pregnant, she said, hugging Giyu. Giyu? Said nothing and gave them a hug that warmed both sisters while he shed tears of happiness. Shinobu? We have to go to the butterfly estate, we want to be safe, she said with a smile on her face. The three of them got up ready to go to the butterfly farm to take some exams in the case of the sisters. When they arrived, Giyu had no choice but to wait. Seconds and minutes passed, and Giyu was sweating a little, thinking that hours were passing. He didn't know what was happening around him until two voices pulled him out of his trance. "Subito. Giyu, are you alright?" he said worriedly, looking at Giyu. "Giyu? Huh? Subito, it's nothing, I'm just nervous," he said, now calmer, looking at the door where Kani and Shinobu were. "Bakomo? Then why were you so distracted?" she said, somewhat worried about the one she considers a brother. "Giyu? It's possible they have nephews," he said bluntly, surprising the two who didn't know what to say to what he said, and he was talking about the two of them. "Bakomo? Yes, I'll be an aunt," she shouted with excitement, attracting the attention of some who were nearby, including Tanjiro, Kanao, Aoi and Yuzui who was healing. "Yuzui? You're going to be an aunt, what an extravagant piece of news," she said smiling. "Tanjiro? But who is his brother?" he said, confused, just like the others. "Subito. Well, Giyu is like our brother, so technically he's Mikomo's and my nephew," he said smiling, and everyone looked at Giyu, who was red-faced. Kanao and Aoi looked at him grimly, while Kanao discreetly pulled out her ninchurito and Aoi a frying pan from who knows where, and Yuzui screamed. "Yuzui? My eccentric shinobi partner, why didn't you tell me about this? We have to celebrate," he said very happily. "Giyu? This is not confirmed." He didn't finish speaking because Kani and Shinobu came out of the room shouting. "Kani, Shinobu? We're going to be parents," they said, hugging Giyu, who hugged them back. But they sensed the murderous instinct of two girls, Aoi and Kanao, who were looking grimly at Giyu, who swallowed hard. "Kanao? What did I cause Kani-sama and Shinobu-sama?" she said, since thanks to Tanjiro she was opening up more. "Aoi? Tomioka, you died today," she said grimly. Suddenly Giyu ran away from the two girls who were chasing him, and thanks to Kani and Shinobu, both girls calmed down, but they threatened him that if he did anything to their teachers, they would cut him off. Chapter 26. The 9 months of pregnancy had passed for both sisters, who were now giving birth to their babies. Giyu was by their side to hold their hands. Shinobu and Kani had retired from the Demon Slayer Corps to have a life with their children, and Giyu said he would continue to serve. "Kani, Shinobu. Aga," they said as they strained as best they could while squeezing Giyu's hands tighter, they simply could not describe the pain they felt at that moment. "Giyu. Come on, you can do it," he said as he used his Susanoo to cover his hands, but something that terrified him was seeing that his hands covered by the Susanoo's armor were breaking. The armor was breaking, cracks were appearing, and this frightened Giyu. "Giyu. I have never felt so much fear, this surpasses even the fear I felt when facing those two moons," he thought, frightened, as they squeezed very tightly. "Aoi. Come on Kani-sama, Shinobu-sama, push," she said while looking to see if the babies' heads were coming out. "Kanao. Let's go, teacher," she said while, like Aoi, she was looking to see if the babies were coming out. "Shinobu. What the hell do you think we're doing?" she said as she pushed harder while squeezing Giyu's hand tighter. Giyu, for his part, used his Sharingan to see if his girlfriend still had energy and noticed how their energy was leaving them as they pushed harder each moment. "Giyu. This is bad, if they don't have energy they won't have the energy to push, I have to give them energy," he thought, while knowing that his hands were going to break, but according to his words. "Giyu. All for her," he thought, ceasing to use his chakra in his Susanoo to pass energy to his girlfriends. They were feeling more energy and saw Giyu, who no longer had his Susanoo, while his eyes were closed as a sign that he was concentrating, and there they understood that he was passing on energy to them. "Aoi. I can already see the head, push," she said while she and Kanao had towels ready to clean the baby and wrap him in blankets. "Kani. That's what I'm trying to do," she said, pushing harder, and thanks to Giyu's energy she felt more relieved. They remained like that for a moment until a crack was heard. They all looked at Giyu, who had an expression of pain, and saw that Shinobu had squeezed her hand too hard, to the point of breaking it. "Giyu. Tsk," he let out that groan of pain, but even so, he passed energy to both sisters. "Shinobu. Sorry," she said, still straining. "Giyu. Oh okay," he said as he squeezed every last drop of his chakra into both sisters. Until the crying of two babies was heard. "Kani, Shinobu." They were panting, they felt energy, but Giyu in his case, had been left with little energy. "Babies? Wah, they just cried while Aoi and Kanao cleaned them up to wrap them in blankets, showing only their faces. They didn't open their eyes as they were newborns. Aoi and Kanao gave the babies to the two girls who looked at their children in their arms with tears in their eyes. Giyu also saw them and was shedding tears while having a smile on his face upon seeing both babies, or rather a boy and a girl. The boy was Kani's and the girl was Shinobu's, and they were very happy at that moment. "Kani. So this is what it feels like to be a mother," she said while her son was asleep in her arms. "Shinobu. It feels good, she said while gently moving the baby in her arms to calm him down, which worked. Giyu. It was worth not having a hand just to see this, he thought while a smile spread across his face. Aoi. We'll take our leave, Shinobu-sama and Kani-sama, she said with a smile on her face, and Kanao gave a slight genuine smile. Hanao. I'm leaving, teacher, she said, leaving. The trio were silent, and it was Giyu who decided to break the silence. Giyu. What names will you give them? He asked curiously. Hani. I don't know, the excitement of the idea of becoming parents overwhelmed me so much that I couldn't think about it, she said while thinking. Giyu. Relax, it's time for you to rest, or rather for me to rest, I'll give you all my energy, so you don't get tired, said Giyu, somewhat tired and sweating a little. Hani. Thank you for that, Giyu-kun. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have made it, she said, somewhat embarrassed for causing problems for her boyfriend, or rather, husband, since Giyu had married them during that time. Shinobu. Thank you very much, Giyu, and again I'm sorry for breaking your hand, she said, and Giyu reacted to what she said and looked at his hand. Giyu. It's okay, anything for you guys, besides, nothing a few days of rest can't heal my hand, he said with a smile on his face. Hani. You always say everything is for us, I'm glad you're so considerate, she said happily. Shinobu. But I think you should go get your hand treated, I don't want it to cause you any problems, she said with a smile on her face. Giyu. Okay, rest because you only have a few energy left, well you're at it, think of the names, he said with a smile on his face. Giyu left the room and went to another room to have his hand healed, while Shinobu and Kani. Hani. I'm glad to have this life, one we wanted since we were little girls, she said smiling as her baby nursed because he was hungry. Shinobu. Yes, I thought we would never have this life, it seems like a fairy tale they told us as children, she said, while she had her baby asleep next to her. Hani. Heh, well, it's time to sleep, it's already night and we'll decide on the names tomorrow, she said, taking her son to her side, hugging him gently, and starting to sleep with him. Shinobu did the same while Giyu had his hand bandaged as he gazed at the moon from the courtyard of the butterfly estate. Giyu. Nisan, I wonder if you would have had that life with my nephew or niece, I wish you were here, he said, looking at the moon. Giyu. I hope I can defend them, I plan to kill the demons so they can have a great life of peace, he thought, determined that his children and wives would have the life his sister could not have. Chapter 27. The demons were finally eradicated by the Demon Hunter organization. How? Well. Flashback. The day of the final battle had arrived because of the sudden news that the demon Nezuko Kamado could walk in the sun. Everyone trained knowing that they would soon have to face Muzan, except for Kani and Shinobu. Giyu somehow managed to prevent them from going, he didn't want them to suffer in battle and for their children to be orphaned. Giyu, along with Yuzui and everyone else, was perfecting his Sharingan over and over again, a way to avoid wasting too much chakra since he could now keep it activated for a long time. His Susanoo only lasts a quarter of the day because it uses too much chakra for both attack and defense, but his Blackfire Susanoo is only a defense mode since that uses a large amount of energy. Yuzui especially improved his shinobi skills alongside Tomioka. When everyone had trained, only one thing remained, the desire to destroy the demons and especially Muzan. Moons 5 and 4 had previously been killed by the pillars in a battle in the blacksmith's village. But when it was time to fight, Giyu alone took on Dauma, the upper moon too. When he found him, he went on guard. Dauma. Oh wow Pilar, this is our third meeting, haha, they say the third time's the charm, so we'll see which of us ends up dead, he said, smiling maniacally. Giyu only activated the Mangekyo Sharingan upon seeing Dauma. Giyu. For my sister, for my wives and for all the women you've killed, I, Giyu Uchiha Tomioka, Water Pillar, will finish you here and now. He said, launching his attack against Dauma. There was something no one knew. Giyu had created a new breathing technique to face the demon. The breathing of the sea. Giyu. Breath of the sea, first form. Swift tsunami, Tomioka said as he charged at the demon at great speed, delivering a vertical slash from top to bottom, which the demon dodged, saying. Dauma. You're faster but you'll die, Ice Lotus, he said, trying to slash Giyu with his fan from which lotuses emerged, but it did hit Giyu. Dauma. Wow, how weak, haha, he said laughing, but the figure he cut was an illusion. Giyu. Third form. Bermuda Triangle Mirage, he said, launching himself into attack again, as the third form created a short mist that made a figure of him appear real. Giyu. Second form. Whirlpool Fury, he said, making circular cuts all around him while trapping him in those cuts, causing the demon to be impressed, but. Dauma. Snow in a withered garden, he said, creating oscillations that went straight to everything around him to end the attack as Giyu moved away. Dauma. You see frozen clouds, he said, creating a thick cloud of ice with his fans and going after Tomioka, who was surprised but did nothing more than go through that fog. The demon thought he was an idiot, but the thing is, Giyu put fire chakra in his lungs so he wouldn't be affected and said. Giyu. Fourth form. High tides, he said, slashing upwards like rising water, and Dauma smiled, thinking he was going to lower his defense, but Tomioka used his weight to deliver a powerful downward cut that left the demon without his blades, forcing him to retreat. Dauma. I plan to end this quickly. I plan to go all out, Crystal Maiko. He said, creating two types of ice puma who stood beside the original demon, but. Dauma X3. Bodhisattva Frost Lily, he said, creating three giant ice Buddhas that were larger than normal, as the three statues were creating all kinds of Dauma attacks. Giyu. Grrr damn it, he said, dodging all the attacks as best he could, only showing the bones of his Susanoo to protect himself and not waste chakra. Giyu. Say goodbye to your senses of hearing and smell. 8th form. Nightmare of the Seas. It is a form similar to the third, only these copies are many, being 10. Giyu X5. 5th form. Sonara's song, they said, plunging their swords into the ground and generating a noise that shattered Dauma's ears, but they didn't stop there. Giyu X5. 6th form. Pestilence of the Depths, said the original, managing to cut Dauma and moving non-stop, cutting a lot and generating a horrible smell that also caused Dauma to have a rupture in his sense of smell. Dauma. I can't hear, I can't smell, where are you? He said angrily, attacking from all sides with the Buddhas. Giyu. You will die, he said, generating his Susanoo at that moment, which had a shield or sword similar to an Insurance, positioned to attack. Giyu. Ninth form. Devourer of Seas, he said, causing the Susanoo to create a very powerful cut that seemed to split the seas in two, cutting the three Buddhas at that moment and cutting off the head of the second upper moon at that instant. Giyu fell defeated because he never perfected that attack with the Susanoo. But at least I won a victory for the hunters. The other fights are like in the manga XD. In the final battle, Giyu managed to defend everyone with his Susanoo from Muzan's attacks, all thanks to his Amaterasu, which burned him more and more. But in the end they managed to hold him back thanks to Giyu's fire Susanoo against Muzan until dawn. End of flashback. Everything is now happiness, everyone is happy. Giyu came to his sister and everyone, and now he has a family with his two wives who love him. End. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.